it'll be one way or the other. I'm not gonna be here for
The meeting, Heather? Yeah? First order of business is to appoint a clerk pro tem. Be resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, appoints Victoria McLaren, business administrator, as clerk pro tem to preside in the absence of Lisa M. Siniglia, our regular district clerk. Can I have a motion? Move it. Al, and so. Thank you, Victoria. At this moment in time, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? At the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, we would call for a moment of silence regarding the tragedy in Oxford, Michigan. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comments, please stick to agenda items only in this first section of public comments. Any topics related to the agenda may be addressed except for personnel or specific student issues. Any emails received regarding curriculum concerns will be forwarded to the appropriate administrator to address. If an individual cannot attend the meeting due to unusual circumstances, please indicate an email to the district clerk. The school board encourages public participation at its meetings to allow for efficiency in conducting meetings and to give each speaker a fair opportunity to present his or her views. The following shall apply to the public speaking portion of the agenda. Each speaker shall state their name. Any questions, concerns be submitted in writing with speaker's contact information, name, address, phone number. Each speaker shall be limited to a time which is approximately 5 minutes. This is agreed upon by our Board of Education. The board will not permit discussion involving individual personnel or students. Direct all remarks to the chair. Community members may not poll individual board members nor debate other community members in attendance. Members of the community are encouraged to also present their comments in writing. Undue interruption or other interference with the orderly conduct of the Board of Education business will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. Thank you. We are starting off with a special presentation. Well,
So tonight we have our leaders of the pack. We'll start with the elementary school.
So we have here with us Beatrix Krasiniak. She's a first grader in Mrs. Pisano's class. She can be described as a very sweet and kind-hearted girl. She oftentimes goes out of her way to be kind to others. She encourages her peers, especially during writer's workshop, telling them they did a great job. We're so proud of her accomplishments. And today I learned that her favorite animal is a deer, and it's also on her beautiful dress. Congratulations.
Mom and Dad, you're welcome to stand up to take a picture if you'd like.
Better angle. Wonderful.
Okay, so from Highland Middle School, we have sixth grader Anthony Cruz and AJ, as his friends and teachers like to call him. So, Anthony AJ Cruzan is a remarkable student and is a pleasure to have in class. It is evident that AJ is completely invested in his learning. AJ is respectful to his teachers and his peers. He works hard on all assignments, and he has a positive attitude. AJ is attentive, participates in class, and works well with his peers. AJ also demonstrates great leadership qualities and is a role model to the other students. He's kind and considerate to everyone. AJ is also passionate about sports. I found out that he didn't play football this year, right, but maybe next year. But he loves baseball, and he puts in a lot of work to improve his play during the year. Whatever he's doing, AJ gives 100%. We truly enjoy having AJ as a student this year, and we are proud to call him the Highland Middle School Leader of the Pack for the month of December. So congratulations. Yeah, hold it up.
Thank you.
One more.
Take that other one.
Thank you.
Bring this up. Good evening, everyone. So at Highland High School, we'd like to take this opportunity to present the Highland Leader of the Pack Award to Lawrence Dahowski. So we have a number of accolades here for Lawrence, who likes to be called Lawrence. Not Larry. So Coach Mancuso in our phys ed department said that Lawrence is one of the most respectful students she has ever had. Lawrence is kind to his peers and teachers, always willing to offer a helping hand, and gives great effort in participating in his classes. I have no doubt that Lawrence will do great things in his future. Ms. Bragg, his school counselor here, mentioned, the first things that come to mind when I think about Lawrence Dahowski are how kind and respectful he is. He makes a point to say hello to each person he knows in the hall, and he always has a smile on his face. He is a great role model for his peers as he treats others the way he would want to be treated. Dr. Paff, you got a long list here, though. Dr. Paff, our school psychologist, mentions, I'd like to nominate Lawrence Dahowski. He's incredibly polite, courteous, conscientious, and helpful. He's very motivated to do well in school, and check out all of those A's and positive comments on his report card. So, in looking at this a step further, I went to look at his report card. It's straight A's, which is absolutely amazing.
And all positive comments.
Amazing. Very fortunately for us and for Lawrence, Ms. Flanagan, his high school counselor at Loreto, she's here this evening to support Lawrence and his family. And she adds, I think very highly of Lawrence. He exemplifies what it means to be a young professional at Ulster Bosons. He comes in prepared not only in uniform, but also in his actions. His character speaks for itself, and Lawrence enters our building with an attitude of professionalism and friendliness. He greets adults and fellow classmates with enthusiasm. He treats his peers with kindness and makes a point to help others. Anytime I ask Lawrence to help with something here at the Career and Tech Center, he always says yes and gives it his all. His teacher for criminal justice adds, Mr. Young loves that Lawrence is willing to take chances and steps outside of his comfort zone. He is an outstanding student, and Lawrence will make an excellent police officer, as he is someone that first and foremost cares about others. Thank you, Katie, for being here this evening. I really appreciate it. Oh, I'm not done. There's more. Mr. Mango adds, Lawrence is driven and hardworking, and I believe that he is an excellent representative of our school community. He is responsible and respectable. He is really a great young man. Mr. Tatum adds, Lawrence is an enthusiastic member of my class, not at all afraid to put himself out there and be supportive of all of his classmates. So Mr. Zimmer and I have spoken with Lawrence about his plans after high school in the career field that he would like to pursue. Lawrence plans to head into law enforcement, most likely in the field of the Department of Environmental Conservation or the Parks Department. So congratulations. Great job.
At this point, I'm gonna have a little break in the agenda. I realized that there was something I omitted. I read all about the rules and regulations of public comments, but I didn't ask anybody if we had anybody that wanted to speak. So does anybody want to stand up and speak about something on the agenda tonight? Thank you. Yeah,
And the kids,
Before we excuse them, I just wanted to thank the parents. We do honor the children here, and that's fantastic, but I just want to say thank you to the parents. After years and years of support, we thank you for all you do as well. It's not an easy job, so thank you.
Thank you.
the parents, you're more than welcome to stay, but we know that there's probably other work and we'd like to get them home, so feel free, this is a good time.
Good night. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You're welcome.
Congratulations, Lisa. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
So great.
Okay, so. So now we have a special presentation by Bernie Donegan's office, our financial advisors. How are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody, good to see you again. We just have a real quick brief presentation for you tonight, but we can certainly dive more into any questions you have. But really just kind of an update and continuation of some of the discussions we've had through the fall here for the potential proposed project. So if you recall, Chris, my colleague in our office, was down here in September to give a presentation to you about some upcoming drops in debt service, retirement of some of your existing debt, and kind of the timing of planning for a new project in relation to that. So we just have a couple updates on that for you tonight to talk about, as you kind of finalize your plans for timing for anything. So that's what we'll go through here. So just as a quick refresher for everybody, this is a chart of the district's currently existing debt service, and everything in here is already finalized at this point. So there's no assumptions or projections in this. We bonded the $8 million project this past summer, so all these are real figures as far as debt service goes. The building aid, there's still a few final cost reports we're filing, but that's pretty well locked in as well at this time. So focusing on the right-hand column here, you can see that local share, which is really what goes into our capital exclusion, the tax cap. You see the next couple of years, we're steady, and then we have a drop-off in 23, 24 as some of that debt retires from older projects. So that's really what we're talking about with planning this next project, is trying to dovetail and align the next project to fit in there, so we don't have any dips and spikes in the local share, and we can kind of manage our budget easier in that regard. And just for the visual learners in the crowd, this is just kind of the graphical representation of that right-hand column in the previous page. So again, you can see right here where the arrow is, that's really what we're talking about in 23, 24, where that drop's going to come down. And we're talking about what can we do to kind of fill that in and try to keep that black bar going across the page nice and steady going out into the future. So timing-wise, if you recall, when Chris was down here in September, we talked about a May 22 referendum would be kind of the ideal timeline for filling in that drop-off in debt. And this graphical timeline is really showing why that would be, and it's based on kind of the normal rhythms and flows of a project. So you'd be voting here in May of 22. But realistically, by the time you get through, design, submitting SCD, and getting SCD approvals and all that, getting out the bid, we wouldn't expect needing a borrowing until, about a year after that, which would then come due at the end of the 23-24 fiscal year and fill in that drop that we were talking about. So when we say that, May of 22 would be a, good target for a vote, that's, kind of the rationale there. And again, you can see in the box there that, we're trying to hit that first borrowing in the 23-24 year. However, if it's necessary that the district, would like to push that out a little further to give more time to kind of figure out exactly what you want to do with, scope and plans for the project, we do have other options. So it's not like just because we're going to push the vote out now we can't fill that drop off. So on the next page, we have one example of, what that would look like. So now we're sliding out the vote to, we just put December of 22 here, whether it's December, October, anywhere in that fall, winter timeframe would be fine. Basically, how we would manage this is now we'd still have kind of the same flows for, approval and bidding and getting out to construction. But now we can, plan, as long as we have a positive voter referendum in the 22-23 year, when we're building our budget for 23-24, we can still put that service in there. Now, we may not need a ban or a ban of the size that we were planning for originally, but if that's the case, that's okay. What we can do is we can just kind of front load some principal that, basically pay back some of the principal faster than we're required to, which, has extra benefits to the district in the sense that you also save interest costs in the long term by paying some of that principal back faster. So we do have some options, if that May timeline's not gonna work, if it's, fall is more realistic, then that's still an option for us without affecting that drop off. So that was one of the main topics we wanted to talk about tonight, just in case anybody had any questions on that. Before we get into the next topic, we also want to talk about maximum cost allowances and aidability in the work. Any questions on the timing?
Jason, just to be clear, if we bid in the fall of 22, all right, we're not gonna create that gap in 24, going back to your first page or your second page, because it drops off after 23, right?
Right.
Then if we don't fill that gap, we have that dip.
Yep.
So we'll be able to fill that gap in 24
Correct, yeah.
with a
Yep, so we'll plan for a ban, and then, that doesn't mean that we necessarily have to do it. If it doesn't make sense, cash flow wise, that we don't need it, then what we've done with districts in the past is basically we treat the budgeted debt service as a 100% principal payment and send that over to reduce the bond size. But basically, as long as you have a vote before you finalize your 23-24 budget, which is typically around like March of 23, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like your drop dead date. So ideally, we'd like to be a little bit ahead of that, so you got time to, you're not throwing it in the budget last minute. You have time to kind of plan for that. And
So
get ahead of it.
fall of 22 would be ideal, yes.
Yes, fall of 22 would be good.
Ideal for a bond vote. Instead of the spring of 22, which is
Now,
working.
and one other thing, like on that topic, so that this is assuming that we're gonna use the proposed project to fill in that drop off. We do have other options if we needed to fall back as well. We finance for buses, so we could front load bus payments. We could do a cash project. Some districts have done that in the past. If you need to buy yourself a year, then we can do a cash project for $400,000 for that drop off for a year. And we could also look at potentially prepaying some debt. I think you have a little bit of debt out there that's callable, but not much that we could prepay. So that's not really a great option in this specific instance, but that's something we can look at as well. And, assuming that the IMA gets passed by BOCES, there's also the option of playing around with the BOCES debt as well a little bit to fill in that drop. So this is just focusing on what we can do with this project, but we do have other options as well that we can look at.
Moving the vote out, do you anticipate any issues with, right now, the interest rates are favorable. They could start changing, and that could affect us down the road.
Yeah, we're seeing rates come up a little bit. They're still, pretty phenomenally low right now compared to where they've been historically. I think the expectation is that they'll continue to rise a little bit, but I don't think anybody's predicting anything dramatic. And again, when we ran some of the previous scenarios we've shown you, those all had pretty conservative interest rates in them, so I would still expect the rates we were using in our samples that we've showed you so far to this point would still be very realistic, even with some increase in rates.
And when we talk about rates, the rate is locked in when there's a vote on that bond, or when you go to bond the money?
The rate for your building aid is locked in when you get approval, so that, the
Okay.
project gets approval based on when that gets approved, but for the bonds, we don't know till we actually go issue the debt. So in this instance, you know, if
So
we're
there's
talking
a
about a
uncertainty
bond
there
in June
anyway.
of 25,
Okay.
then we don't know what the bond rate is until June of 25. And that's why we build in those conservative rates, because we're not talking about something happening on the day of the vote, we're talking about something happening 2 years from the vote.
And is there any feeling on the board as far as, is a full vote favorable? Clearly, when you put the time in, you're putting something to the voters that you hope they approve. Is there any strategy with packaging it along with the budget vote versus a separate? I mean, you've been on,
Well,
historically-
historically, I think our spring votes have been the most successful. We had some negative votes in the fall.
that's what I think, right?
Our spring's been most favorable. I mean, it's just, I think it's just the climate, now we're coming out of the winter months and we look forward and.
September 1, we know what we get in our mailboxes.
Look, we were gonna be racing to get this put together, for May, you know, a vote for May on this project. We really would have been, and we want to do it right. That's why we're trying to see it pushing it off.
It's not out of the ballpark yet, though.
It's not, yeah.
We've got numbers,
exactly.
so I mean, we have,
Well, I
those are
think
conversations.
our dollar amount, it's not like we're proposing a bond for 25 million or 28 million. We know for a cost neutral bond, it's just $16 million. So whatever we build could be built into 16 million. We have no other leeway there. I mean, we're not developing a project. We're building a project into what we're going to anticipate being a dollar amount that's going to be cost neutral to the taxpayer.
That's true, I think that's everybody's goal as well.
And
We don't
the
wanna
original
exceed that.
inquiry into.
So we're building into a dollar amount that we already
But
have.
the original inquiry about moving to the fall was, we're still sifting through what we want to do, what the project was.
Well, I mean.
We're also worried about honestly, about the upcoming BOCES vote also.
There's some conversation there.
Right.
What was the result of the lawsuit?
There are 3 districts that still have not weighed in yet. They should weigh in on the 14th and 15th.
They have to weigh in by the end of the month, yes?
Their next board meetings are the 14th and 15th, so I'm told by Dr. Corey that we will know
You'll know that.
after the 15th.
Ulster County BOCES is going to be putting a capital project out also at the same time. And we are responsible for a certain level of that project financially also. So,
I don't think that hitting the spring is impossible, though. I mean, as far as closing it off as an option, is it? I mean, I feel like
it's not. That's
No, the
we
only
started
reason we-
jogging a little quicker when we
The only
found
reason
notice. and-
we asked them to
We're
do
not-
this is it was the request of the board,
Yeah,
is do we
yeah,
have
yeah.
some options? So when we got into that, we engaged in that conversation, we felt that it was important that they come down and explain to us what all our options were.
Tom's in the house too, hi Tom.
Yeah, and Tom might be able to speak to this a little bit too. I know what we've seen is, probably like a little bit of a rise of popularity in those fall December votes. Obviously, it's, you know, community by community based in terms of what people, you know, want or feel like their community will support. But one of the reasons the fall ones are getting a little bit more popular is because of that, you know, timeline of like roughly a year for design and approval. If you're out in that fall December timeline, then you get that approval in the middle of winter, you can get out and get that early winter, you know, kind of late winter, early spring bid when, you know, hopefully the contractors are hungry.
I would think, I'm not gonna speak for Tom, but I think that's pushing the design piece, because if you get your approval in the fall, the design takes place in January, February, March, and then it goes up to SED, so you miss that first summer cycle. You're going into the following summer.
You missed that
I
this
think
summer,
I'm
but you
correct
may
in
miss
saying
it in May anyway.
You do, I think, when you vote in May, your designs are gonna wrap up sometime in, November, December. And you're now hitting a bid cycle that's into the new year. And, some are saying that that's not favorable anymore. A lot of projects now are gearing up to bid in fall. Now we're seeing most projects are bidding in
Yeah, it's
October,
like
November.
back, right, yeah.
Well,
yeah, yeah.
you
Where
know,
that's-
favorable votes are, bidding cycle is, December, January, November, December, January.
Yeah, because people
Contractors
want
are
to be
looking
first on
for
that
the
list.
following year.
Where when you vote in the fall, you hit that window for the following. Yes, you missed that summer.
You miss a year and a
And
half.
this one's.
Yeah.
I agree with Tom Miller, that, I see here that we had the 17.5 million vote back in October of 14. And I would rather make sure that we have everything aligned, we know what we want, because at this point in time, I don't know if we know exactly what we want.
Right.
And I would rather not feel rushed. So I'm with Tom for a full vote.
Correct, but we're putting out a number that we already know, we're not developing a number. The number that we're voting on.
Like, we have some
everybody knows.
parameters in place here that should help.
We're gonna
Especially now we
build
got
the
numbers.
numbers into our number.
Right.
We're not building a project
Right,
not knowing the number.
but I don't feel it's on fire anymore that we have to get this aligned because of the financing tied in. We have time.
We know we have options.
Agreed.
Yes, which makes me feel.
Very viable options,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Could you, I'm sorry, could we just review the options? Let's say that the vote doesn't happen for 6 months or a year. You said that we can have a cash project and a prepayment of debt.
Yeah, I mean, the first
So
option
this
is
gap
probably we're
doesn't
trying to
happen?
manage it here with this project, if we can still do a fall vote. You know, if for some reason this was not an option and we want to avoid that drop in existing debt, we could look at, you know, front-loading some of our payments on the buses that we finance each year. We could look at doing a cash project, or we could look at prepaying some of the existing debt. But again, with the prepayment of the debt, there's not a lot that's currently callable to fill that in, so
Okay.
that's maybe not the most realistic
Okay.
option in this situation.
This is really good to know.
Could you explain cash project? What do you mean by cash project?
Yep, so in your budget, there's a code, I think it's like 9950 interfund transfer. So you can do it, basically build into your budget. I don't know if you ever heard of like capital outlay projects, the $100,000 projects that districts can do. Basically the same kind of concept, you build a transfer to capital into your budget for that year for say, you know, whatever that drop in debt is, about 360,000. So you plug that in, and then you basically just submit a cash project to the state, so that we don't do any bonding, because it wasn't a separate proposition, it's just,
Just you're gonna pay it out later.
right, it's just from the tax money you've collected, you pay a cash project.
Some examples of a cash project, I've heard of like blacktop, blacktop, I mean, really, it's unlimited, yes?
Yeah, you can do any scope that you can do in a bonded project. You gotta be careful with site work, you gotta make sure you're doing some work within the building to make it aidable. But basically, you do a cash project, you know, transfer it to capital fund, spend that money, and then get the aid back on that over 15 years.
when we do, whenever we put together a vote, have a successful vote, and it advances to SCD, have they, for a while, a few years ago, they had a lot of backlog. Have we gone over that hump, or are we still roughly at the same point?
So right now, it's been manageable, they're about 8 weeks. But, you know, we anticipate with all of the federal funded projects starting to hit the boards, that we're gonna see an uptick. Also remember that because federal funded projects are grant projects, SED will give them priority. So you're gonna see another renewed interest in third-party reviews, which are still available to districts to kind of shorten the queue. So, but we do anticipate it's gonna, over the winter months, you know, so for this, it's gonna be unavoidable. That queue is gonna increase because of that.
There's a couple, you know, there's actually some abatement projects within this list that are around that amount, that's an example. There's a lot of.
Yeah, so that's an option. Typically, districts don't want to use that option unless you need to. It's like a fallback option, because you're not gonna get the.
Well, this is just to line up the
scale.
financing the way we want it to, I mean,
Right.
there's a real purpose
Yeah,
here.
so it's an option out there if you need it, but, you know, generally, that's why we package things into larger capital projects in general, is for like the economies of scale, the fact you can do more work all at once instead of just 400,000 a year for the next 15 years.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the timing, or? Okay, So the other thing that we had, for you at the back of the presentation, just a refresher on the maximum cost allowances. And again, I know, one thing Chris talked about when he was here was the reports that we run for you, kind of those initial numbers. We were assuming 95% bond percentage, or to say it another way, assuming that 95% of the cost would receive the state building aid. So one, big caveat there is we gotta make sure that we stay within our maximum cost allowances at each building, because if we go over those, regardless of whether it's aidable scope or not, we get no aid on it. So this is just a refresher of kind of where we stand today for maximum cost allowances. So where this first green arrow is pointing to that row going across, that is what we would call kind of like your full maximum cost allowance at each building. And that's on a construction basis, so 16.3 million at the middle school as an example. And then what the state does is they'll go back and back out any work you've done in the last 5 years. They call it a rolling 5-year aid ceiling. So we have in there, we assumed on here just to kind of pick a target date. We said April of 23 SED approval, so anytime there or after, this is what would still be in those look backs. So you got a little bit of work backing out, but not too much at this point. It would really just be the 8 million authorization that would still be in the 5-year look back at this point. And then the highlighted line in there, just for illustrative purposes right now, we plugged in kind of a rough scope of what you've been looking at. Right now, as you've had some discussions on some possible scope for this upcoming project. So that is included in here. It was about, I think we had about 12.7 million of scope items that have been identified as a possibility for this project. So that's what's coming out in that highlighted row. And you can see right now, everything is okay in terms of the aid ceiling to the buildings. We do have, if we include the press box, that would be non-aidable because it's a no instructional space, so it's its own SE project and we get no aid on that. But everything else at the buildings is okay right now, but with the caveat that we are on the incidental side, which is where that second arrow comes in, which that includes site work, which is anything outside the building, so fields, parking lots, anything like that. We are a little bit, tight to those numbers based on where we sit today, so adding, a lot of additional site work type scope items could push us over and change that maximum project number that we could do with no cost.
And what's that amount, just so I'm looking at the right line for the aggregate? That,
What's
the
what
site
amount?
work cap, so to speak?
So again, the second
3.2.
yellow row where the second arrow is, that's kind of the full maximum cost allowance,
Okay.
and then we're backing out the numbers below, so then these green numbers at the bottom is what's still left after that initial 12.7 million. So you got about 1.7 million left at the junior, senior high that will be, available if you add anything else in the scope in that regard for site work.
Jason, the lower right-hand corner, that's what our current project is built around? Is that?
This is based on the scope sheet that was sent over to us
Right,
the
so
other day, so it's
that's
still a
the
little
hard
lower
cost,
than that
12
number
plus
we
or
were
other.
on.
That's the actual construction cost, the hard cost?
This is the numbers from that sheet, plus we added on the DASNY fee to get up to the 13.1. On your sheet, I think it was about 12.7, that was everything, that was construction, escalation, contingency, incidentals, fully loaded costs.
So our incidental and site work, we're only gonna be able to do 3.1 to stay within that neutral. Is that what I'm looking at?
3.1 additionally, because this includes that initial scope of 12.7 that we were looking at the other day.
I'm lost with that 12.7.
Sorry, I guess I should have clarified, I don't know if everybody
Oh, that one?
Yep.
who's in those by, yeah.
All right.
So that 12.7 plus we added the 400,000 we need for the DASNY financing budget on top of that, so we come to 13.1, and that's what's being backed out in these highlighted rows right there.
So I just thought I would mention for clarification, we've identified 12.7 in scope, but in our discussions, we kind of came at the conclusion that we have the ability to identify 15.5 in total scope, And then that with all of the other costs would get us to the 16.6.
Right, that with the DASNY cost on top of it would get you up to that. Again, so the 15.5 again is with the caveat, that we stay within that 95% bond percentage. If we go, if we blow through some of these aid ceilings, then that number would need to come down to stay tax neutral or put more cash in.
There's some equilibrium there, fair
Yeah.
enough.
But that's correct, like Victoria said, you're at 12.7 right now, you can go to 15.5 if you kind of keep it within these aid ceilings and be at that no impact project that Chris had presented in September.
Right, so we can go to 15.5, and if it's all just construction and not site work, if it's all inside, then we'd be fine, because we have lots of,
Right, you have plenty of room to cover the incidentals
Room
around any of those things. It's gonna be if you're picking specific site work items like fields, parking lots, things like that.
What's our max that we can do in site work?
so it's down here by the buildings. You can actually, Jason, if you, yes,
Yeah, there we go.
So again, it's 5 buildings,
Right.
so
that's being aided for.
after that initial 12.7 you pick, you still have 3.1 left at the middle school and 1.7 at the junior, senior high, and 1.7 at the elementary as well.
Right. So in addition to what we,
So it's partially, are you picking site work, and then also where is that site work, which building is it at? There's more room at the middle school versus a little bit less so at the junior, senior high, and the elementary.
Right, so if you-
Okay.
And a lot of the identified site work was clearly at the high school.
Yeah.
It was at this campus where you have incidentally the least amount of cap available, which is unfortunate.
the other thing that we had discussed was trying to stagger
Yep.
the project so that we could access the the incidental cost allowance that's gonna drop off in '24, right?
Right, so one concept you could use, if you decide that there's, site work items you'd like to do, site incidental beyond this 1.7, but we wanna stay within that 95% bond percentage, the $8 million project resets out of the 5-year aid ceiling in September of '24. So if we did a staggered, like, 2-phase project, we could vote it all at once, but if we do kind of an initial submission to do the majority of the work and then keep some of that site work back and try to submit it for approval after September of '24, then this 2.8 million would clear out and fall down to the bottom line. So now you have another 2.8 million of incidentals in site that you could spend. Because it doesn't lock in at the approval of the project, these aid ceiling calculations, it's when you submit to SCD and they pick it up on a project number by project number basis.
If we did that, would it cause issues with bonding and timing of bonding?
We would likely split the financings at that point, so you do 2 different finances, so your financing would be pushed out on that second phase, most likely, so a little bit more interest rate risk there, but again, we have, some pretty conservative rates built in
But we
there.
would still fill that whole kind of dip that
Yeah,
we
the
need.
drop off would not be a problem, because we could front load the first bond and then have
Okay.
some room for the latter bond, so from managing the local share, it shouldn't be a problem, it just would be kind of splitting into 2
There
separate
is still this
financings.
BOCES bond hanging out there too. I go back and forth on that. I know we'll know in a week or two whether that's something that really is something we're gonna need to plan for.
Well, I think the biggest thing with that is if all the component districts approve it, then we have options for the financing, and we could use that project as that front load that he was talking about, for that first.
Oh, that's true. That would qualify?
We control that.
Joke on you.
As long as everyone passes it. If one district doesn't, then they're gonna dictate how we finance.
Right. Well, then it's out of our hands.
Then it's out of our hands, and that will add another possible hurdle to the conversation.
Well, no, if a component district votes no, that's going to the,
Well, then it's going to the voters, yes.
so the voters.
But then and if the voters then in the county approve it, we don't have say on how it's financed. It's determined, maybe he can explain that. Can you explain the,
You're saying if the IMA doesn't go forward, there's a
Yes.
countywide vote?
yes.
Yeah, so if the countywide vote was a positive vote, then the BOCES can still move forward with the project, and at that point, the BOCES has to finance it. You no longer get to finance on a component basis, the BOCES will
Right.
finance
We
the
would just
DASNY.
pay whatever that cost is
for
for.
everybody.
We're
So
still
they
paying
would
that.
pay.
Oh, yeah, no, we are.
Yes, but it's
We
not.
just have less, we have less
Control.
flexibility on how we do it.
True.
We're not financing it, BOCES is.
Right. So you have less flexibility, and you probably pay a little bit more, because you're gonna have to pay the BOCES is gonna have to pay the dorm fees.
Right.
and the
Higher
dorms,
cost.
revenue
So I think
bonds,
that will
and
help,
higher
that
interest
will be
rate.
our conversation January 11th, because that will be
Yeah,
after
well,
everyone else has their piece
there'll be
done.
some knowns.
Is that going back to our support service conversation about Proposition 1 and Proposition 1A? When we talked about that, putting a,
We spoke about that as well, not necessarily in terms of BOCES, but in terms of the aid
yeah,
and the maximum cost allowance, so we had discussed
I
having,
don't know if the rest of the board.
And we'll have,
we can do that.
I think we should save that for the capital conversation.
Right, does that affect that?
Whatever the total numbers are, will go against the aid ceiling, so. But that's, we can, as you start, as you kind of really get into finalizing a scope you're looking at, then we could certainly, update this maximum cost allowance sheet and show you kind of where you sit at that point.
The difficulty with the 24 date, it's a nice drop off, it's 2.8 million, but you have to figure out how you're gonna carry escalation to 25 essentially.
Right.
And what is that potentially gonna be?
That's
on
my
a pretty
concern.
pretty big number.
That's my concern, I mean,
Yeah.
it's pushing it way out there.
Yeah, my
There's
concern.
a lot of unknowns going out in this industry. Then you're losing potential to do more for the dollar amount. You're moving everything out, and climate can change dramatically. And you lose some of that buying, I'm gonna call it buying power.
Mhm.
But I think the other point, and I don't know how it affects that, but we had talked about if we're doing that cost neutral project, and then there is additional, because looking at this, I mean, there's $30-something million worth
31.
of work that we could potentially do, and we're not gonna be able to finance all that, but to do a Proposition 1, I'm gonna call it, that deals with the 16 million, and then Proposition 1A, if one is approved, two is approved, then you do some of those additional items that we talked about that we don't have, because it's so large right now, we don't have the capacity in the 16 million to put all this into it, so we do another little proposition. How does that fit into the bonding and all that? So now we're going over that cost neutral number, and now the taxpayers, if that's the route the district goes, the taxpayers are going to put the bill for the additional, whatever, $1 million it might be.
Yeah, so you're essentially saying your one option could be do a Prop 1 that basically fills into the bar there, it goes across and that's tax neutral.
That's our thought, yeah.
And then Prop 1A or Prop 2, whatever you wanna call it, might be another 15 million to clean up the rest of the items, and maybe now you come up, 200,000 above the line all the way across. And then if that were the case, we would quantify in our report, what that is for the average homeowner
Right.
in terms of a tax increase.
So I think
So,
that
and
ties
basically
into
from a,
if we're gonna accelerate this, or we're gonna move it out to the fall of '22, and then we have time to kind of
Right.
look at all that other, so that's a discussion I think the board needs to have.
and from a tax cap perspective, if you do have a project that has a tax impact, then you'll have 1 year where you kind of, jump up, have a higher tax cap increase. It's all excludable since it's capital, so you still only need the simple majority, but it might be a larger number that first year that you're building that project in. Then once you've built it in, now it's in your base, so it's flat from there. But when the project first comes online, which might be 2 or 3 years after the vote, that's part of the messaging to the community in that budget vote to remind them that the reason it's a little higher is because of the project that they previously approved.
Very
That was all we had in the report. Any other questions on any of that, or any other project planning questions?
So I asked Tom Ritzenthaler to stick around for a little bit of our capital project conversation, which would be after consent agenda. So he'll be able to talk a little bit more about the numbers that we sent out to everyone. All right?
Yep.
That's up to you. I don't know if you have to get back there tonight.
I'm actually staying overnight.
Oh, well, if you want to stay, that'd be great.
I think that'd be helpful, I don't mind.
That would be awesome, thank you. Don't want to take advantage, so thank you.
Now we are at the consent.
No.
Curriculum and instruction, principal's monthly report.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you all had a good, happy holiday a few weeks ago. Good to see you all. So in addition to the report that I sent the other night, I just wanted to add a few of the things that we did yesterday at our half-day professional development. One of those things was our equity team, our building direct committee met yesterday for the second time. And so what we used that time for was to delve into some of the Panorama Survey results that we recently received. So that was the survey that we had started last year with students and faculty. I'm sure Sarah and some of the district officials will talk more about district-wide what that looks like. But for our students specifically, we received those results in grades 3 through 5. And that helped our equity team talk about what direction we want to take that committee and identify some of the areas that our students indicated are some focus areas, or helped us create some goals in terms of how our students are feeling in the building, and areas that we can address, and also things that we can identify as strengths currently. In addition to the equity team meeting, we had some time with David Tranter, who's an Ulster BOCES rep, and he's helping us as a math consultant, helping us identify a math program. And so that was part of our TSI plan from last year, was to spend some time this year identifying a specific program or curriculum that we can move forward with. So he spent time, about an hour and a half, with our grade level coordinator team, and walked them through that, continued to walk them through that process of narrowing down certain programs that fit the needs of the building as identified by teachers and staff members. And then finally, we had Shannon Ramirez and Chrissy Saylor from the high school. They came to the elementary school to share their teacher learning community that they put in place here at the high school a few years ago. And so that's basically instructional rounds where teachers, it's a voluntary team to be on, and teachers sign up to have other teachers observe them and provide feedback, anything that they noticed or any wonderings they had about the lesson. Teachers are observed obviously a few times a year through the APPR process, but this is a more frequent feedback from a larger number of people. So that's something that we're looking to bring to the elementary school, and we have 4 teachers that signed up, for this first round in the spring, and we hope to expand that, in the future. And then I'd like to shout out our nursing staff in the health office. Since the break, we have seen, obviously people were doing a lot of gathering over Thanksgiving. We have seen a spike in some of the cases, and more so exposure to positives in either the community or family members and things like that. And so that's led our health office staff to be very busy, but they've continued with the diligence that they've shown throughout this pandemic. So thank you to them. Any questions about the report?
Yeah, were you able to identify the 3 areas that you want to target from the Panorama Survey?
So we had about 20 questions on that survey, and there were a number of different areas that the team identified as things that we can work on. This was the first time that they've had a chance to look at that data. We got it back. I think we administered the survey towards end of November, and then we got that data back last week. So it's going to take more time to really delve into it than the hour we had other agenda items, on the meeting agenda. But there were certainly some things that we took away. Specifically, there were questions such as, do you feel, basically how supported do you feel in the classroom? And there were discrepancies among our black students when compared to, students of other races that led us to identify that as an area that we can share with the staff. Because it's one of those things that when it's tangible in data that our students submitted, it's a lot of times conversations talk about historical trends or hypotheticals, and so when we see in a survey question, here's how our black students answered this question versus here's how white students or all of the other races in our building answered it, and if there's a 15% discrepancy in a question like that, that leads you to have some real conversations about what are some strategies we can implement to address those numbers. So that was certainly one that we found troubling and concerning, and that will lead to some further conversations as a committee about how we can address it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, you see me thinking, Mr. Darling,
Yeah.
but we'll let you off. I've been a critic on some of our programs, because it's a systemic issue, it's not a Highland issue. When they give this money that's targeted at students, in this case, African-American students, we always talk about training and staff, and it's like a sponge there, it soaks it up. My question will be, not now, but as we head out, what's the student experience, how is the student experience different as a result of this investment, the plan, the support? Because I understand we got to try to work that Rubik's Cube and find how those families, those kids get additional something, whatever that is. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to start off, Matt put in his board report, his 10 days or his Spirit Week for festive, or at the end of the month, so I wanted to just pass this out for the middle school is known for our Spirit Weeks and our dress-up days, and the kids are gearing up and very excited. Starting this Friday, we have our 10 days of festive fun, ending with our epic, ugly, tacky sweater contest on the 23rd, which is always a huge hit. So that's it's on both sides because it's 10 days worth. So that starts on Friday, so that's super exciting. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was what we did with our superintendent's conference day yesterday, the half day. We focused our grade levels on our IST process, which is instructional support team, and how we move students who are brought up at a team level discussion during our common planning time. And when we're looking at our data at a Tuesday conversation, which is just talking about students of concern, and where we move from there to a larger discussion that's more focused on a student to look at that data and then see what we can do with that data and what accommodations and interventions we're using to see improvement or not improvement, and where do we go from there. So really solidifying that process, because the last year and a half with COVID, where we were having those meetings, what those meetings looked like, and what the things we were putting in place was a lot different. But now that we're back in person, we need to readjust how we're doing those things to make sure we're serving our students the best way we can.
Again, I thought it was really great that for the proficiency level 1 and 2 students, you had the personal sit-downs. I think that is probably going to take you a long way in student performance. So I thank you for that, and please extend my thanks to the faculty that's attending or working with the Bridge Academy. I think that's what you call it.
Our sale? It's sale, it's
Yes.
yes. Yes. Bridge was last year.
Okay,
Bridge is over
okay.
there.
Yeah.
All right, yes, whatever the term is, but thank you.
Yes, our 8th grade team, we've seen a lot of really positive results, and our 6th and 7th grade teams are less anxious now that they've seen it through the 8th grade and are ready to jump in January to do the same. And we've had great conversations with students and parents as a result of those meetings, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, I also wanted to just applaud you, because I think, going back to Mike's point about what is the student experience, right, and what is pushing them forward. I think individual conversations goes a long way, so thank you to them.
I'm very proud of them, yeah,
Conversations.
it's been great. And we're doing other things for our 3s and 4s too, so you'll be hearing about that in our January report. So we wanted to make sure we were getting everyone, but we want to start there.
This looks like a lot of fun.
Yes, we're very excited. All the close down over the weekend. It's a huge hit every year at the middle school, so we're very excited. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I have two additions to the high school principal's report. As you know, yesterday was a half-day superintendent's conference day, and one of the things that high school teachers worked on was a curriculum reflection. The document that they worked with came out of the curriculum subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of the district's direct team. The document asked teachers to reflect on their instruction through the lens of being culturally responsive. The document was shared with faculty last month at the November 2nd Superintendent Conference Day. After seeing this document, many of the teachers requested some time to reflect and thinking about their own curriculum and how they provide instruction. So teachers were asked to look at the document with the mindset of whatever they're currently planning to teach, and to choose one unit or one topic on which to focus. Teachers were reminded that there are no right or wrong responses, but it's about giving some very serious thought about growth. After completing this individually, teachers gathered as a department to share their thoughts with their colleagues. The purpose of the activity was for teachers to self-reflect on their instruction, and I do believe it was time very well spent. Secondly, over the weekend I got an email. I received an email from our favorite Washington, D.C. correspondent, Scott McFarland. The email included a link to a video with him conducting an interview on the air, and he was proudly wearing his Highland Central School District pin that we gifted him last month. That's why he sent me the video. And he wrote, it was a short email, and it just said, "Proud to show the nation my Highland High School lapel pin. Thanks for the thoughtful gift." So I thought I'd share that. I thought that was pretty cool. I watched it, don't even know what the interview was about, because I was just focused on the shiny thing on his lapel pin. And that's all I have for you this evening.
Well, Bill, after last month's meeting, I go to the BOCES board meeting, and I don't know if you get the statistics reports of CTE and revisions, but I want to let you know, month-end October, Highland students had the highest attendance rate out of all of the other districts. So, pat on the back to your.
Thank you.
Round of applause for all of them.
Yes, all of our students and for our counselors who supported. That's huge. I did get a call from one of the administrators there to let me know about that.
Yep.
I was thrilled to hear that. They'd
Over
be very proud.
90%, over 90% attendance.
Yeah,
Yep.
very
It's
proud.
And also, we have, this is the biggest I've seen in my tenure at BOCES. We have over 108 students registered in BOCES courses. And I think BOCES has maybe about 42 different classes, whether it'll be the first year or the second year, but it's 42 altogether. And I believe there's 40 of the classes, there's the distribution of the Highland students. So it's all sorts of different career paths that they're taking. And that's really wonderful.
Very exciting. So happy to hear
College
that.
and career ready there, Mr.
That's right.
Brown.
I am going to.
We have to try to expand that, that's my goal.
Well, there-
Expand that, get more students involved. If they're waffling on what direction they're going to go, we have to be able to push them
Yeah,
in
but it's
the
just,
direction that we
this
think
is,
is best fit
this is
for
the
their future.
biggest year I can remember.
On Thursday afternoon, we have a principals meeting, the Ulster County principals meet monthly, and for the past 21 months, it's been on Zoom. This is the first time that we're meeting in person, and it'll be at the CTE Center in Port Ewan on Thursday afternoon, and I look forward to going and walking around and seeing. I love walking around. I go there early usually just to walk around and see our students in action, and they see me and they're like, "Whoa, what's he doing here?" It's funny. It's nice, but I'm thrilled to hear that.
The programs have really evolved too, and I think they are attracting students. I think the trades, and they pick it up from families and whatnot. Try getting an electrician or a plumber in there.
Yep.
But I don't think it's moving the pace that it should be moving right now. I don't think we're promoting, I don't know, does BOCES come into our district?
They do.
To promote?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
think
look
we
at
go
it,
on
we've got
a regular
100
basis,
over
not
100
just,
kids go.
once a
They
year.
generally visit the schools once a year, I think, and
Those
Each high school decides how it's going to be presented. We actually have them push into classrooms, the smaller groups. to
Yeah,
work
you give
with
them
kids.
full access, right?
Absolutely. I know
Yeah,
there are
full
some
access.
districts that, put them in a room in the auditorium and have kids who are interested go find them. And no, we push them into the classes so everybody hears about it. I think that's one of the benefits of the approach that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Anybody on the board have questions of any of our directors?
Yes, I
Oh, is Kathy there?
Yes.
Go
Oh,
first.
no, I just want to thank you. I really like the report that you're giving about all the different runs. That's makes me understand exactly your department, and thank you.
Good, you're welcome.
That's a good
Anytime.
statistic.
My question for Frank for athletics, do we have, I know we just concluded our fall sports season. Has all our coaches turned in their self-evaluation yet, so the superintendent can review?
Yes,
Yes.
They have.
and they've all been responded to.
They all have been responded. Okay, good. Follow up on that.
Anybody else have a question for Frank?
I just want a comment, thank you for all the wins, losses, and the info in the report, looked real good.
Well done. So, anybody?
No, good
Yeah.
stuff for Kathy.
So any of our directors have anything in particular they want to say to us, other than your reports or to back up your reports?
Well, I'd like to just comment that yesterday we did some cybersecurity training online that we didn't do last year. It wasn't necessary last year. And we have over 150 of our staff, teachers and faculty and staff that are, were assigned to it, have already completed it in full with flying colors. So that is going to be a continued pattern. There will be constant type of updates and educating to our staff to prevent, hopefully, some type of user mistake on phishing and that kind of thing. So I think it was well received.
And to add to that, and I haven't even told Carol this yet, but we were thinking that we would have all of you do the training as well. It's only, I think it took me a total of about 20 minutes, maybe 25.
Yeah, I think there's 3
to do the
videos.
whole thing. And I think, it's just good
We have
reminders.
accounts and technologies, so it applies.
Right, I mean, it's a lot
I
of
believe the
stuff.
link is in your email.
Yeah.
Yes,
Did you
okay.
get an email?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if it was connected or not, but it definitely is worthwhile. It's, and even just talking to my husband who works in industry, they're getting the same kinds of trainings, and every time I watch it, I get some reminders. of
Reminders,
things I
right.
didn't know to look for, or some things like that. So I would encourage you to visit the links. Definitely.
And also, we are now equipped to push some of that information and education out to our students, which is extremely important. So I'm trying to set that up with some of the teachers and the building leaders. That's good.
Do we do tests of people's response, like send out emails and stuff like that?
We do.
We do.
We're equipped to do, we don't like to talk too much about it, but yes. And then with this additional program that we just added on, there's going to be added campaigns to people who maybe make a mistake. They'll get sent some educational material from the system.
How successful have our tests been?
Highly. We did a campaign 2 years ago. We did some education and we educated staff. I did a presentation. We did videos pre-COVID. And since then, it's been very few phishing attacks or, links clicked on. We have this security program in place, and I can actually put that in my next report for you.
Yeah.
It was highly successful.
So I know, just like you said, Sarah, we have it at work all the time.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I'm really good, and the other day one got me, and I was like, oh! It's a new vacation policy, and I just clicked on it, and I was like, and then it said, oops, you clicked the link, so, I'm usually very good with it too, so I think it's just always a good reminder to have.
I just went to a conference in Albany on Friday, and the Homeland Security was there, and the FBI, all the offices up in Albany were there. And they all get duped in their offices too, so we should all feel better when we make a
But it's
mistake.
it's good reminders
Yes,
to, you know,
yeah.
it was late at night, I was working, I was like, you know, like, you kind of just let your guard down.
They look so
sometimes,
real,
but-
they look so
Mhm,
real, yeah,
yep.
so.
And I know we've had ones even now, and I don't know if the train kind of goes into this, but we have ones that are now calling, right?
Yes,
And on the phone.
and on the phone,
So it's
texting.
not just even just the emails, now it's, you know,
Yeah,
a
text
lot of
messages
different.
are
Text
incredibly
messages.
Incredibly
a lot of
bad,
different-
gotta be really careful.
Yeah, if you don't mind providing that data.
Sure, sure will.
I appreciate it.
When do you anticipate giving it to the students?
I wanna finish the faculty first, they have another week, and then I wanna talk to specifically maybe some teachers that are in the tech world over in the middle school. I wanna hit the middle schoolers, and I think I could probably do 4th and 5th grade. And high schooler, we can almost do it anytime, because we just have to tell them, they get in their email. They should be able to do it. I think it's important.
Yeah, one of the things is all about social media, which is, I thought that was a very good one for the students to see.
And this product has so many appropriate and relevant videos for students as far as leaving a footprint, that kind of thing, and how it's important to be aware of what information you put in everywhere. So we'll look at some of those.
Thank you, Carol. You good? Any other questions for any of the directors?
Just a comment. Thank you, everybody. It's been a while since we opened school September 1st, and here we are on the verge of the winter holidays. So thanks for all the effort.
Okay, now we are at the consent agenda for our main agenda. We are looking at items A1 through D3, can I have a motion? Sue and Camille. Does anybody have any questions or want to pull any of the items? A1 through D3. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? 6-0. Thank you.
Yes, we do have a couple of our new hires here tonight. So if they'd like to stand up and just tell the board who you are and what position you'll be in, that would be wonderful.
Lily Stamper, I'm going to be a teaching assistant at the elementary school.
Congratulations, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Caitlin McCarron, I'll be AIS reading teacher at the elementary school.
Thank you for you taking time out of your schedule to be here this evening. We do appreciate it. The board always likes to put names with faces, so we know you have other things that are going, so if you would like to, you can stick around, but if you'd like to head out, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to you being in the building.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
Not yet, not yet.
Not yet.
I know, I'm like.
All right, now we are at the student rep report, or Maggie?
I just have to turn my computer back on real quick. I forgot to print it out. Mr. Darling already said everything that I had for the elementary school, but for the middle school, on Thursday, December 23rd, they're hosting the Reindeer Games, which is similar to the Ghost Games that they had for Halloween. But this time, the students will again enjoy the holidays before break and just have a good time with each other. At the high school, the Interact Club will be making holiday cards for senior citizens at local nursing homes. We've done this in the past, but this year we're also working on getting the elementary and middle school involved. More information on this is coming soon. The food drive for Thanksgiving was also very successful. Multiple boxes of donations were delivered to the Methodist Church in the middle of town.
and many were helped because of the high school's act of kindness. This past November, the Mon UN Club had their first conference. Normally, we travel to Bard College or Boston, but because of COVID, we haven't been able to do so. This year, instead, we created our own conference, and we're still able to have a lot of fun. That's all I have for high school, but I do have one thing to add. I was wondering if it would be possible for me to send out a survey to all of the schools, so the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, probably about like a week before every meeting, and just open up to the students if they want to add something, and if they have any questions, specific questions, anything they'd like to see at their school, and if I think it's an appropriate response, I can present it to you at the meetings. So does that sound like a good idea?
You're their representative,
Thank you for
so
doing that.
Yes.
it'll work best, that's great.
So I'll get that ready for the next meeting. Any questions?
Was there any student discussion about the Panorama Survey?
So my English class did it. I don't think I didn't hear any specific questions or concerns about it, but I'll let you know if I do.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
Thank you. No problem.
Assistant Superintendent comments. Patrick?
Yeah, okay. So this week, we're gonna meet with our Medicaid representative. When we start, a couple years ago, we used to get long lists of all the students and potential areas that we could be collecting funding on that we weren't, either because of consent or certain paperwork. And usually the lists were pretty long. We just got our list the other day and it was about this long. So we were excited to see that. And it was really things that were out of our control. So sometimes if a student's at a private program, there has to be certain credentials to get Medicaid funding, and if they have hired someone that doesn't have that, there's really nothing that we can do about that. So it was, and a few that, parents that just choose not to give the consent for as well, which is, we try to provide some education for it, and we can ask for it, but we can't require it on our end by any means. So to see that list get really, really small was nice. And kudos to Ms. Bezak in my department, who really has been on top of that. And making a lot of phone calls to really get that list down. So we're gonna meet with them on Thursday to review our numbers and go over any specific things that we need to. We usually meet with them twice a year, so we'll be doing that on Thursday. I have a sheet I'm gonna send down. This is current openings throughout the district in different departments. Some of them you'll see that are on here were filled about 3 minutes ago with our consent agenda, so you can kind of ignore those, and we'll update this as we go on. But you can take a look at this, and then if you have any questions after tonight, you can send me an email or anything about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've actually,
Yeah, this
I
is
have not
wonderful.
seen this format
Yeah,
ever. So thank you.
this is awesome.
So, and some of it might be a little confusing just with how some of the positions need to be filled provisionally because of civil service and callback rights.
It's an ongoing effort. And it affects many of our departments.
Okay.
Thank you for staying on top of it.
And these are all positions that are in the existing budget, right?
This is great. Patrick. Thank you.
Nice job. Sarah?
Okay, I only have a few quick things. As you heard, we had our half-day professional development yesterday, just yesterday. And so the buildings all filled you in. They all had really separate agendas because they just had different tasks they needed to get done. I was going to also mention the one district-wide training we did was the cybersecurity training. So Carol already gave you a good overview of that. So that was all going on. The Panorama Survey, I will be giving you the result of that at our next meeting in January. And there's two reasons for that. The student one went pretty smoothly because we have a captive audience for them.
The teachers, we sent the teacher, the staff survey out this past week. We wanted to get the student one done first, and so that is open for another day or two as well. And then the parent one, the last I looked, we only had about 120 responses. So I'm going to send it out again to see if we can get a little bit more feedback from parents. But we also have to send we've started sending out this, a new state ed requirement, a digital equity survey. And we have to collect information for every student in Highland Central Schools about their access to high-speed internet as well as their access to devices. And this is information that we need to enter into our student management system, school tools for us, and we have to have it for every single student. So this survey is on our website currently. We will be sending home a school messenger tomorrow with a link as well as a QR code. We'll be sending it home with parents. Of course, it is a survey going home. We're going to stress that this is required by New York State. We're hoping to get as many parents to fill out this survey in the first round, but we do anticipate that it's going to take multiple rounds and probably one-to-one phone calls eventually to get all of this information in. But the digital survey, hopefully, that's the most efficient way to gather the information because it will go right into a spreadsheet and then can be uploaded to School Tool and doesn't require manually entering a lot of information. But we do anticipate, just in talking to other districts that have worked on it already, there will be a lot of follow-up, and New York State is being pretty consistent in saying they want 100% compliance
I
with
want to
this.
see if you could partner up with your teachers, I mean, that's what
Yeah.
some districts are talking about.
Yeah, no,
because
so, yeah, we're,
parents happen to be a little more responsive to their
Right.
child's teacher versus.
yeah, so we're working on that. That's just a new mandate from New York State, and of course, a good one. We want to know if our students are connected or not and all of that, but it is a rather big ask from the state.
So what you're saying is,
So,
let's say the entire town of Highland has good service, but they're actually trying to drill into, you sign up for internet at your, okay, gotcha.
exactly, so,
Okay.
and I mean, it's a little bit better. The first version of this, they wanted to know the internet provider even, but thankfully that seems to be gone from the survey. I know, I'm like, how are we gonna even do that?
Sure.
So that'll be an ongoing project really over the next probably couple of months. So we have that survey as well as the Panorama Survey, so I don't want parents to get too confused about the two of them. So I want to give the digital survey a little time to get our first round back from that, and then we'll resend out the Panorama Survey because, of course, it's just valuable information for us. So that's what's happening with those two. And then we had our November Equity Committee meeting. And you heard in the reports some of the work that's continuing to follow up in the buildings. We have created equity committees in each of the 3 buildings that are specific to that building rather than the district-wide committees. So, in our vision of that, the building-wide committees are a little bit more able to respond to things that are happening in the building a little bit quicker than a district-wide committee. They're looking at the surveys, they're making plans very specific to the age and the developmental needs of the students in the building. So, I think it's all going very well. We've added several students to the district committee, and at our November meeting, it was really one of the first times that the students had the opportunity to just share some of their experiences, and we gave them a fairly large chunk of the agenda time to talk about their experiences in the building. And none of it was that surprising, I didn't think. They talked a lot about coming back to school after last year and how some students are feeling very unsettled and anxious. They talked about vaping, which we know has been a problem this year. So again, not too many surprises, but I think the committee was very interested because there are community members there just to hear what's going on in the building, and they also shared positive things that are happening in the building too. So I think that was a really good opportunity. And then I did leave the meeting early, so I didn't hear the end. But it sounds like there was some good discussion about
what our norms are as a district for behavior of students and expectations of students. But overall, I'm very proud of not only the work that we're doing, but the tone of the meetings. I think they're very productive. I think people feel comfortable talking. And any of the work that's being done in this, it's conversation and talking that needs to happen, communication.
If I could just share an observation that makes me feel good, as this work and the dialogue progresses, we should hear about it in multiple places. So I really appreciate the conversation at the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, and with those folks, and conversations at the district, and that's how you make systemic change. So it's good to hear that there's those conversations happening up and down the continuum. Thank you.
I sat in that meeting myself.
I thought I saw you in there.
Yeah, and I was impressed. And Dr. LeBlanc weighed in a few times to try to bring things back to center and direct things. It was very interesting, and it's moving along.
Yeah, and again, I think that we have done a very good job of centering the conversation about, really on school climate and making sure all of our students feel welcome and are represented in the buildings. And so certainly we know that there are some groups that don't feel that. So, let's focus on those, but it's not one particular group we're looking at overall.
I could tell they were very comfortable
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, I was very proud of our students. It was really nice to see and hear them.
At that level, that was a good news.
And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll just tag on to the direct meeting. That meeting is open. Any board member that would like to join us at those meetings, we can get you the link. Just let us know, let Carly know, and she can get you the link the day of the meeting. The next one is December 21st. So we're in concert season. It's time to celebrate with our students. So this coming week, there's a concert each night of the week. Monday night at 6 o'clock is the elementary school on the 13th. Tuesday, and by the way, we've staggered the times, we've staggered the groups, so there aren't too many folks in the auditorium at the same time, so that we are aware of the COVID protocols. Middle school will be over 2 nights, the 14th and the 15th. Both of those nights are starting at 6 p.m. And again, staggered the groups, and then the high school will finish up on Thursday the 16th at 6:30. I've included those in my weekly Friday updates, so encourage you to come on out and see those next week. Here in town, Light Up the Hamlet is happening this Friday, 5 p.m. Tomorrow night at the high school, we have the second night of the vaccine program. What did I say? Oh, elementary school, sorry. We had one at the high school. We had one at the high school on Sunday. The second dose of the Vax to School was on Sunday. The elementary school is tomorrow. Anyone who had their first dose already has an appointment set for between 4:30 and 7:30 tomorrow. There are additional appointments available, so if anyone's looking for a booster, or even if you're looking for your very first vaccine, you can go on and make an appointment. And quite honestly, we had people walk in that night as well, and we were able to fit them in. So thank you to Neil Smoller and his team for doing that for us. The Ed Foundation will meet again on the 16th, and they'll be planning the snowball, so keep February 26th open at Novella's. And then we're also at the time of year where we need to start thinking about inclement weather days. So I just thought that it was important to just let everyone know that we do have 7 days built into our calendar. This will be my first time doing this, but we've talked as superintendents in the county, so we will coordinate with surrounding superintendents and Mr. Miller. We will be on the phones early in the morning. Our goal is to have those calls out between 5 and 5:30 a.m. so everyone has ample time to adjust schedules. And then, when possible, if we know that the storm is not going to let up and we can make that call the evening before, we will do that so parents have plenty of notice. I would say that would probably not happen as often. I would really need to know that storm is not going to let up. I wouldn't want to call the day and then the next day go, what did I do? And used a day up. So And then New York State still has the waiver in place that if we do utilize all of our emergency days, we can go to remote instruction after we've used up those days. Once we start getting closer to that point, if we do get closer to that point, we will make sure that students have those devices home every night so that if that were to happen, we would be prepared. The Ulster County School Boards Association meeting that was supposed to be tomorrow night has been canceled. So if anyone was planning on going to that, it's not going to take place. But the next one is January 27th, and the Ulster County legislators will be there. And if anyone's planning on attending that, we just want to make sure that Shyla gets that information so that we reserve you a spot. Any questions?
No questions, just a comment, just going back to the vaccine clinic. I know I sent a note to the entire board, but just to, again, recognize you guys for the administrators, for everybody that was there and really took part in that and making it successful. It really was a great night. It was very well organized. People were in and out, as quick as you can be, you have to sit. But, even the kids, after they got their shots, you could see they were all happy and, dancing around together kind of, so it was really just a great night. So great job to you guys for your leadership on that.
Thank you.
And I feel what Heather said, I came Sunday, got my booster.
Did you?
It was in and out, like, spent more time waiting, 15 minutes after than
Sure.
to go through the line. So
I'm
it
glad to
was
hear that,
pretty quick.
because the first round on a Sunday was not that quick, so I was very pleased with the way it ran at the elementary school, probably because we had enough folks running the tables. We didn't really have a lot to do with the Ulster County one on Sunday, we just offered the site, so I'm glad that worked out for you.
How many shots? Do you know how many with the count? is?
How many are left, I don't know.
No, how many have we done?
I don't remember how many did.
There were 240 available, and there were some no-shows. So I think it was right in the 200 range.
It was like 190.
190
Yeah,
something.
190.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
A combination
Wouldn't have
of
thought it would have been that
young
many.
And
That's
it was,
great.
it was open, I mean, he has it on his website, so there were folks that came from other districts. There was a little boy that came from Hyde Park.
That's
awesome.
State,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think even, and I would say it was pretty close to 60-40 children to adults getting their boosters.
It's good. Either way, make it
And a few
accessible.
first shots for adults too, which is great to see.
My wife picked my daughter up at college and brought her so she could get her booster, so that was good. So that was, it was a good
That's
night,
great.
so we hope tomorrow's a great turnout.
Overall, my daughter just commented how great the nurses were, so.
Oh, that's great.
kudos to them.
Yeah, they were
I
phenomenal.
didn't know
Yeah,
she did
they
it. I
definitely were
didn't know
phenomenal.
So,
They,
I know the one
they
nurse
had to
was
be
definitely
pediatric
fantastic,
nurses,
yeah.
'cause there were definitely some children that were not excited about it. They did a nice job.
They did a very good job.
Are we streaming the concerts?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, that's a good question. We had a streaming group, right, some students that we were paying. Is that not active anymore, or?
They're just recording, they weren't streaming, but I do think Dan Shout might have some equipment to do that. He's with his new,
We should look at that,
Setup.
because, I understand you can come to the auditorium, but offering both venues, especially, it's a good service, just something to consider.
Yep.
Board of Education, new business. That's,
We're on old business now.
old business, we are onto the capital project.
Just kind
update.
of like something on the business. I'd just like to resurrect a discussion that we've had many times. And I think today's climate, what's happening in our schools throughout the nation, I think we've got to seriously start having a conversation, bringing back an SRO to our building. We're going into our budget cycle shortly. I think it would be beneficial to our community, to our students, our staff, to have that discussion. Maybe Joel can reach out to our local PD to see, we have a new chief and maybe things have changed from the past, what the cost would be and if we need to do a little share there. I mean, I'm in a lot of school districts in my work throughout the area. We're one of the few does not have an SRO program in our buildings. And I think it's time that we seriously consider that, look into the options we might have, if it's not through our local police department, maybe through our county. You know, the county has some programs, so I think it's a valuable resource, and I think it's time that we seriously look at and consider that discussion. I would ask to have that have some research and have that put on future agendas for dialogue, budget dialogue.
Have you had SROs in the buildings before?
We did. We had SROs for a good number of years. Back then, it was through a grant. That grant expired, and we really didn't consider. And then we went through that, that economic downturn in 2008-09, and county pulled out mental health resources. County pulled out, money for SROs, and we didn't have the funds. And we tried to resurrect it a few times, but the costs were too extreme, so we didn't follow through on it. But I think discussion has to happen again, and it has to be a serious discussion. We can do a lot of things.
Barrington was actually one of our first SRO. I think he was our first SRO. In the West Haven community there.
So we're obviously talking one of
And then
each,
Phil Rolls
one of
was
each
also.
building, correct?
No, right now I'm just saying, let's get what one would be and go from there. We've never had one in each building. We've always had one that was a roaming individual, but I think we have to start small, and if the board decides they want one in each building, that's up to the board, but I think we just gotta have the conversation.
We were planning to invite the chief and lieutenant to one of our cabinet meetings soon, just to we haven't had them in a long time, so to talk through some safety protocols and things like that, so I think that
See
would
if
be.
that's something they're interested in. I know there's costs involved. We know that the whole story isn't cost here in Highland Schools with regard to the SRO. I think there's some cultural pieces that we'll have to get around, but let's have the dialogue. We see what's happening around the nation.
Jim is a willing part, like that.
I'm sorry?
Jim Jansa was a willing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll
start that.
A very important conversation, I appreciate you bringing it up, I think it's important to get on our agenda and start talking about what budget season coming up.
And I think with SROs too, SROs, but also just, that's, it's preventive. So when things go wrong, to have that person in place, but just what are we doing to support our kids so we don't get to that point where we're having to go into lockdowns and, so I just think
It's another resource.
we've got to be proactive too with how we're supporting the kids.
We used to have three gentlemen, I think one was Mr. Sargent.
We do.
Oh, okay, so what are their, I always
Their
define them as a school.
Security.
As opposed to,
Like school monitors or whatever the county
Okay.
title is, but
so we still have the security folks.
in each building.
Okay.
So an SRO
So how will
to-
their
Yeah.
duties differ?
So an SRO is a uniformed officer.
Okay.
And he or she is, kind of a liaison between the police department,
Okay.
whatever level it might be, or the sheriff's department and the school. But they are,
I believe
they are not.
those that are qualified go through training.
Yes, yes,
Oh,
specific
typically,
training.
to be a school resource officer, and they try to intervene. They're not just there, an individual with a gun, they're there to help, solve issues and intervene and.
Yes, I mean, it was a very successful
And
program.
it's another,
When we
it's
first had
another
it.
resource that we can use besides our counselors, our social workers, and our intervention specialists. I think it's a valuable.
Different
tool to
prong
have
of that approach, yeah.
in school setting, in today's climate.
We keep talking about drawing from town of Lloyd and or county. Are the state police available for this, or are they a different?
Not typically.
Any of them are available for a cost, I think we have to look.
No, as an SRO.
I haven't seen any state trooper SROs
This is
personally.
your local.
Mostly it's a local.
Well, it's supposed to be, part of the SRO program is that relationship building with the local.
We can check, but I've never.
They
heard of
used to
state
do
police.
it. State police used to do
Yeah,
it.
a while ago. What was that?
The state police used to provide the SROs. They used to provide them for free as part of the grant funding, and when that stopped, that program seemed to stop.
It's just a deeper, bigger pool of candidates as opposed to local PD and or sheriffs, you know.
I think that local connection is important too.
Yeah, I think that's
No,
part
it
of it.
definitely is, it definitely is, but you do have a lot of people that are state police guards, I mean, this is their turf, this is their area generally.
Let's see what the administrative discussion yields. You might have chiefs say, look, I'm strapped now and can't afford anybody, but
Well, I think
That's a
we
the
want to
buildings
definitely
might, Bill
have
might
some
say,
say.
I don't want them, middle school, yeah, you know, let's talk about it, let's see what they need, what are the needs?
As a state trooper, I did some training many years back as state trooper, so they would come in and talk to the staff about just the look fors. You know, there's no profiles for people, just kind of things to look for with students, and you know, trying to get support that way. So that might be something else as far as training.
I think a couple of years ago, I can't remember the officer's name.
Yeah, I think he was.
Better.
Better, yes,
He's someplace
yes,
else now.
yes, better, yeah.
Yeah. Not this area
Yes.
I don't hear that name around here anymore.
Now he got promoted, he's an alderman now.
Yeah, it was his training, yeah.
But there's still a presence in the school, they
Absolutely.
still do walkthroughs.
Every day.
Yeah.
Matt, they're in your building also?
Yes, yeah, very regularly.
Yeah.
All right.
And they, I mean, they stop in classrooms and meet
Yeah,
students
that's what I
when
thought.
they're
I
there.
thought they were
And
visiting.
They didn't have contact.
we are always actively encouraging that, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they have, it's an open door policy, and anytime they wanna come in and walk around, any of the different agencies.
Thank you. That's
And they're on
good.
all three.
And they
All
all
three
agencies
do.
are actively walking
All
around.
three buildings, all three departments.
We built beautiful, secure main entrances in every building. It's the next natural progression. I'm sure Tom's phone's ringing off the hook about metal detectors. Metal detectors and officers and securing your buildings are, unfortunately,
Yep, yep,
again, a regional discussion.
tragic.
All right,
We should look at it.
we good? Good. Capital project updates.
So I want to thank you guys for sticking around and being here to field any questions that come up during this conversation. So the numbers that you have on the multi-page spreadsheet, they were developed by CS Arch for us as part of the pre-planning process. We met as if you notice the number for everything that we were asked to cost out was around $3.1 million. I'm sorry, $31.1 million.
We'll take it.
3.1 were sold.
No more discussion.
Elementary school, high school, it's the time of day. So we took a hard look at, the things that were on here, and we made some decisions as a support services committee of the things that we felt need to be in a base project. Obviously, the things you'll see, the different columns here, anything that's highlighted in yellow or pink or green have not been included in the final revised project cost. And then on the high school side, we took the athletic fields, the running track and the turf, and we left that off as well. And we can have some further discussion about that piece. If you look at all of the items, we were able to narrow it down to about 12.7. So when they were talking about the 12.7 number in the beginning, that's everything that is not highlighted in a color. That's what generated the 12.7. So from there, we had a conversation with Bernard Donegan's office about what are options as far as what we could go up to. And I believe, Victoria, that number was 15.5.
Right, so we have about 2.7 left to.
Right, so there's still more that can be added in, but we also need to be very clear that although support services is advocating certain items here, the conversation is not over, and we obviously want the board to weigh in. But we tried to make sure that every building was receiving some sort of, some part of the project to stay within those debt ceilings that they were talking about earlier. There's a lot of yellow on here, so there's a lot of things that we highlighted. And again, if you remember, this was just the A's and B's from our original list. So it's not even the C's, D's, and the E's that we identified from the building condition survey and what administration had put forward. So this is really just the A's and B's and then the wishes of the board, which were to look at AC, athletic fields, and a possibility of a new maintenance facility. So, so if the folks on the support services want to add anything to that, I think that's where we're at right now. And then the biggest thing, if we have any questions about, numbers, we can ask the gentlemen that are still here. But this would be a good time for us to do that, so that we're not keeping it.
So Joel, I'm sorry, the yellow highlight, those are the A's and the B's?
Nope, the yellow highlights, everything on here is an A or a B. The whole thing, $31 million.
Oh my God.
So the yellow is what we took out of the project to reduce that 31 million down to 12.7.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
if you look at the spreadsheet, there are the two blue columns.
Uh-huh.
The column on the right, the revised project cost, that has numbers for each item that was included in the 12.7.
Okay.
So and then Alan had spoke a little bit earlier about the possibility of doing a multi-proposition type thing. So if we took everything that is not highlighted in a color, so it's in white, and then added maybe 2.5 more, that would be your base project. And then if you wanted to put the gray areas, so the athletic fields, the turf, and the running track as a B proposition would only be voted in the affirmative as long as the A proposition was voted on as well. And then obviously we'd have to give an option of no to the whole thing. But the whole idea is that at least the bulk of the work would be covered in that first proposition. But we didn't want to put the proposition of the base project up against the field, because we're fearful that people would come out and either everyone's going to come out and vote for the field and they're going to vote no on the other really needed stuff, or vice versa. They'll come out and vote for the needed stuff and then vote no on the field. So we wanted to make that as a tiered option.
Let's hope that.
Well, yeah. So then in my thinking also, so I didn't chime in earlier, but I envision that October vote as a positive thing. If we were to have all of these plans in place, we were to have the displays drawn up and the nice charts that they're going to be able to create, we could have those on display during the month of September and October at every single one of those games that is out there on that field. So folks could actually look at the field, look at the proposal, it would be there, and it's right in the season when everyone's using that field. So it's sort of a motivator that you can see what this field could look like in the future. So it's just sort of a marketing technique, I guess. I'm not a marketing expert, but in my mind, I'm thinking if I can look at the field when I'm there for my kid's game and see, oh wow, this vote's coming up, and if I vote in the affirmative, look what we could have. It's just a way to have the stuff there and people be able to interact with the information on a weekly basis.
So, that being said, if we did wait till then, we wait till then and vote. And if it was set up as a proposition, one proposition scenario, could then ideally one proposition be that delayed phase that we're talking about for the debt limits and everything?
Too small.
Well, it might be, I'm trying to think.
The delay phase, it would still be voted as a proposition. The only thing it would impact is we would have to put more escalation on the number, because it wouldn't start, it wouldn't go to the midpoint of construction, wouldn't happen until sometime in '25, so.
Right, so if you wanted to do that the way it's phased, that's something you thought was something you were interested in, that could be in any scenario, whether it's all together, or part one, part two, that's just kind of
carve
getting
out
the
that
details, but there's, you know, as Tom says, pros and cons to doing it, you open more age ceiling, but you also, the work's probably more costly, so.
So these items are color coded. We said white is a high need.
In
I'd say,
the, in that 12 million.
And
Last week, 12.7 million, the white's in.
So if you look at a line with, that's white still, if you look over to the right, that number is in the revised project costs.
okay.
Any of the highlighted lines, their numbers are not in the revised project cost total.
And that includes gray.
That includes anything that's shaded.
Thank you.
And you said that's at 12.7 now, but can go up to
15.5.
15.5?
But we do have to keep in mind the maximum cost
Yeah.
allowance for the incidentals.
Yeah, you can't come right at the number. You gotta leave the cushion out.
What does the orange mean?
The orange was for further discussion because it's a really big number and we've got to evaluate the level of
Severity.
repair or whatever that we intend to do
Right.
because of that number, because that impacts the cost allowance greatly.
Yeah, so that's not included at all right now, but
Okay, yeah, I've only seen this just tonight, so I'm wondering what the colors mean.
Right.
and what about the green?
Green was stuff that we took out that was, because there was a conversation about air conditioning, and in trying to get to the right number, we took out things that were just replacements of units that were just a one-for-one replacement of the heating element at this point in time.
Thank you.
and then we ran out of colors, so the green is also,
We didn't run out of colors.
the green is also the idea of that maintenance facility at 337, so.
Just a little discussion on the maintenance facility. It's something that I've mentioned numerous times at our board meeting, that this district needs a updated maintenance facility. I mean, we're working out of a building that was built in 1960. The actual maintenance garage and such and supporting areas has not been updated outside of maybe a lift at one point in time, and a new roof on the building years back, but we're running a transportation department with X amount of buses. We've asked, and I'm gonna repeat this again, I said at the last meeting, we've asked taxpayers to vote 2 bonds for additional maintenance equipment. And I think it's beneficial for supporting all that to have a new updated maintenance facility. Now, maybe the discussion can be, I think, Tom, I wasn't here, unfortunately, at that last meeting that support service had, but I believe this location for this maintenance facility right now is at the upper level behind our current bus garage. So, if it's too costly, maybe somewhere we can adjust that and bring it down to the lower footprint. Just put a building up, I don't know.
Could you add a second floor to what's there?
I would think that would be costly too. I mean, we're looking at, an area where a bus can come in, 2 new lifts that are going to lift. I mean, we're utilizing 1 lift right now out of 2.
Well, we have a 65 passenger bus lift and we have a lift for vans and trucks.
Everyday nights.
So we're looking to, because of the number of PMs and inspections and stuff we have to do, adding a second lift so we can do that more efficiently, whether it would be in a new building or in the current building.
Right.
How much better can you get than 100%? Your passing rate on these buses is 100%.
We keep trying, we're still working at more, getting better scores.
Bless you.
They're looking
Thank
for
you.
extra credit.
It's built into the white.
They won't give us extra credit.
That project is about $300,000 for 2 new lifts.
Yeah.
In the current facility.
So this is property we own behind there?
Correct.
Part of the discussion around that maintenance facility is even the buildability, if that's such a word, on that piece of property. We're making assumptions about what the land is. It's pretty obvious just by looking at the surrounding land. Is there any way to go in there and spend a little money and do some preliminary testing to really solidify that?
We are soliciting proposals to, one, extend the survey to include that area. We don't have the final meets and bounds in that area of the site, and also do some geotechnical testing so that we know, any kind of rock shelf or ledge that would impact the foundation system, the sub-grade construction.
I would try to fast forward that.
Yeah.
See how quickly we can do that.
Yeah, and as we all know, it's hard, it's one thing to get the proposal, but it's another to get the crew scheduled, right? Surveying crews right now are out 6 weeks because they're so packed, they're so jammed up. Now, they start to slow down now, but if we get snow on the ground, then they won't be able to do the work at all. So, we've got a little limited window as to whether we get them scheduled or whether we're gonna be waiting until next year.
Okay, that would really help shape the discussion on that building, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we did bring that up last time, Pete and I got together to talk about it.
And ideally, a location for that building just makes more sense to be somewhere on this campus or as close by as possible.
I'm happy to see all the boilers being replaced. They're all in the white regions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tom, I know we had a discussion earlier about we moved the project out to the fall of '22, and then construction's going to go into '23, '4, possibly '5. Are you confident with these numbers? I mean, you got your contingencies, you got your escalation. I mean, they are pretty conservative, yes.
Yeah, we try to be conservative in the market.
So I think we'd be okay if we went out that far out.
Yeah, and we're talking with our estimators about it. We're also looking at the most recent bids that we just received. Unfortunately, we just took bids on Pauling's new turf field, so that was very, very helpful to inform this, the turf, the track. So we had absolute current dollars, so we know exactly what it's gonna cost to put it in the ground. So we were able to really look through that and inform these budgets, which was helpful.
Yeah, no, it's all timing, and you know that.
Yep.
It's timing, that's why, I'd like to see sometimes, projects move along, because timing is critical once you start pushing them out.
But the bid climate was key. Our bids were about $1 million under our projected budget. And all of that, I think, had to do with we bid it now. We took bids in November. And I'll tell you, that was
You were fortunate, Newburgh was not fortunate.
Yep. Yep. So, that's part of it as well. So, hitting that good bid mark.
We want, we've been talking about 2 big ticket items out there, whether that's the field and turf and everything that needs to be addressed there, or district-wide air conditioning. Just as an approach, I think it would be foolish to lose the opportunity to knock one of those items off, knowing that this rotation will come down the line and the boards of the future will have other options to approach that. So
the only thing I'll say about the turf and the track is just keep in mind that you have to do them in the right sequence. So if you want to do one before the other, it has to be the field first, because you have to build your way out of it. So you can't think, well, the track is less money, we'll do the track first.
No, right.
And then you can't do them in reverse order.
No, I think you got to bundle it.
Yep. You either have to, you kind of keep those as a singular element.
And one of the things with our walkthrough, because we know the track needs resurfacing, we know there's some things that need to be addressed there, we know there's some areas around the track that they want to address. It just makes sense to bundle that and just get that final product and address all those needs.
Yeah. Then you can do it in the proper sequence and proper order. It's really important.
I mean, if you look at, what you're saying, Mike, when you look at the first page, those first 4 areas, looking at $5 million plus to turn that athletic field into a turf field, an upgraded running track, expanded bleachers and a press box.
Yes.
It's a chunk of money.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean,
remember-
I think that's where the support service kind of lean towards that. If the community is really gonna support that, let's put it as a standalone prop and let them support it. Yes, and
Give them the
then
opportunity.
it's gonna cost
But not have
them,
it be
you know,
something that
X
fails
amount
the
of
rest
dollars
of it.
per assessed value of their home.
Because that'll take you over your cap,
Yes,
your cost allowance, and that's what happened to Pauling, and that's why Pauling had it as a second proposition to their proposition. Well, they actually had a third proposition as well.
Yeah, you can go.
Beyond the field, they said, okay, here's everything else. But they were concerned about that as well, and so they put it up as a separate proposition.
The press box, like some schools have, like a audiovisual classes, or media classes. I mean, if we were to try to use that as an opportunity for that, would that help with?
Yeah, it doesn't, the capacity's fairly limited on how many people you can put in the press box. SED actually limits it, it's more restricted than classroom. So,
It's a small ticket item, the press box alone.
yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but it's not gonna meet their
It's not gonna.
instructional spaces have certain specs.
Correct.
It's just not.
We tried. We asked in a number of different ways.
And you're comfortable that that press box area, as presented, can be done independently of any other additional?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It makes sense. It's a storage issue for the equipment and everything, and security.
We've done a lot of press boxes, you know. That seems to be a lot of districts lately have been doing press boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, with any packaging on the projects, AC wise, I don't see in favor at this moment in time of large areas, making sure that the large areas in our building are climate control.
Like cafeterias, libraries.
Cafeteria, library, auditorium,
Yeah, districts take different approaches. Some want to do, you know,
maybe gym.
expand it out or do, you know, summer school program areas in the building. Some want to do cooling zones in the building, you know, so they're doing, you know, cafeterias and the libraries where they know that the kids will cycle through it on every single day.
Or just as breakout areas when it's really, you know, or, you know, again, cycle of kids through, during the day, so. Yeah,
no, I mean, we all know that. We could afford, we could put out 32 million to voters and they accept it, it'd be great, but we gotta face reality. We can't do that, so I think we really have to look at what our real immediate needs are. And then anything that we feel that, and this is me speaking here, anything that we feel that is, you know, outside of that immediate need and concern, you know, boilers and such, that we put as a separate prop or two, and the voters make the decision. I mean, I've always been a supporter of the turf field. We put it to the voters years ago, and it got defeated. And we brought the board wanted to bring a committee in, and they, as a committee of 25 members, said, no, you're not gonna put a turf field forward, and it passed without the turf field. I don't know, why, how that all happened, but, so we spent a lot of money upgrading our current field, and I gotta think, and I think Frank could probably get support from his coaches, that it's probably the best natural turf field in the area. Because it's well maintained, and we spent money on it. Most recently, we spent $200,000-300,000 or more on it. So,
I think that's my point. I think we keep spending $200,000 and $300,000 on it every couple of years. And if I add up all that money, I'd
I
rather
don't know if it's every couple of years, we did it one time when we had drainage issues, but no, I'm a supporter of a turf field. Is it maintenance free? I don't think so. I think every director of facilities would say it's not maintenance free. What's the turnaround cycle, 10, 12 years?
You can,
to
yeah.
replace the carpet?
So,
you gotta go. And then,
thank you.
all right?
On the average, Yeah, the last three that we did, the two in Martintown, and we just did one for Marlboro, and those were about between 11 and 12 years old.
So there was another $500,000
Yeah. Also, you know, the maintenance, there is some annual maintenance that districts do. They bring in, they scrub the infill material out. Usually the service can do that for about $5,000 a year. And then it's grooming, right? Either buy the equipment to groom it yourselves, because it's an ongoing thing, because it does have to be groomed on occasion. Or sometimes we have some districts we work with that bring in a company to do the grooming for them too. So, you know, it's just what your preference is.
I think that the students are telling us that they desire a field, and I'll tell you why. Because that little patch of turf you put out there is in such high demand. And that's what I'm speaking to.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, and I would like to pose it to Frank. Do you hear
And our
feedback
student rep.
from the oh, yeah.
You know, well, Sarah.
But Frank, what do you hear from the students?
As far as athletics, we utilized it, but we're really gonna see that in the spring. But for me, just coming in here day in and day out, phys ed is out there every day.
But
And it gives them an opportunity to use it.
I think you're talking about the big field.
Right.
Oh, you're talking about the turf field?
Right.
The
natural
Actually,
turf.
like, are the students asking for a turf field, the big one? Are they?
Well, the students that are here now, they won't even be part of that.
But
I mean,
what
right
have you
now, just about every district is putting in a turf field.
Well.
Whether it be a Pauling, who's a small school, or a Newburgh, or a Wallkill, or whatever. I mean, everybody is putting a turf field in.
Rather than seeing what the students are asking for, 'cause like we said, the students are here now, we're not gonna see it.
But what not
Yeah,
necessarily
but
the
What are
they
the
still have a
students-
voice.
Right, they
Of
do,
course they should have a
absolutely,
voice.
but I think the voice is really in, how much is that turf, small patch of turf that we're using now, to your point, how much is that being used? And I think you can say it's been used, you said by the PE classes.
It's definitely being used during the day, where before, for them to go outside, it would be a conflict with the grounds crew to get a field prep for that day. Now they can go get that prep because
Right.
the phys ed class is going into that area. They don't have to worry about it being wet. You know what I mean? As long as it's not pouring out, they're out there utilizing it. We use it during soccer, especially with the lights, you know, it was being used later at night. I really see it being this next spring where we're really gonna see it.
Trying to get out there.
When we can get out there in March and maybe there's snow on the ground and we can't go anywhere else, so the baseball team and the softball team. We haven't seen it yet because of COVID. You know, where we had that March and April area.
Yeah, I can say as a parent of an athlete, where I'm traveling around to so 2 seasons, I'm fall and spring, I'm traveling around the whole area, and our facilities are not like everyone else's. So kids go to the facilities and they're like, oh wow, this is nice. The families that are there are saying, oh, this is nice, we wish I had it at Highland. So I mean, people that are out there and seeing other places and you come back here, you know, they are saying it. You know, the kids, you know, so I hear it from the kids, I hear it from the adults. You know, Mike and I hear it at, you know, we're at games, we hear it, so it's, you know, this, you see everyone else has it, and then we're like, we're still here and home our natural field. So I mean, it's a nice field, yes, but, you know, the springtime, a lot, in some years, like when you're trying to get those spring sports in, and we've had these heavy winters where it delays the season, and the kids are now getting prepared later, so it does have an impact. And even with the phys ed classes, if there's a game, they can't be out there in the field because they have to get the field line and all that. So I think, you know, it's something that's, you know, overdue, and so everyone else around us is doing it.
I've just been reading about this. There still seems to be an injury risk, a higher injury risk with turf fields. And I guess, so we're willing to.
You can injure on grass fields.
But no, it's a fact that the turf fields, there is a higher injury rate.
They've changed the technology too, they've been changing it.
Right, but it's still out there.
It is. I'm not gonna say it isn't, but it does extend the use of the field with a lower cost of ownership. You don't think it's a lower cost of ownership, Pete?
There's still, to do it right, there's still a fair amount of maintenance that's gotta be done on it, including, cleaning the particles, what do you call it? Grooming the field, adding material to it so that the grass height just stays the same. You have to do all that kind of stuff. And the hidden cost that's in the field is the loss of state aid if you don't get the 15 years out of it. That's another hidden cost that's in it. So you got, all that's still involved in it. I mean,
It was so wet this season, it was a slip and slide out there.
It's home field advantage.
It didn't work for Buffalo last night.
I think the problem is you become a little more weather resistant. But
So, to me, I don't want to go backwards, but in 2002, they did a project. A lot of those things in that 2002 were not completed. There was supposed to be a press box. The bleachers were supposed to go from the 25 to the 25. There was supposed to be a concession stand. Those weren't done. In 2014, none of those things were addressed. The field was in there. I was part of that committee. I said, why not put proposal 1 up and put proposal 2, and he only goes, and nobody else wanted to do that. So if you're asking my opinion as a taxpayer, I think you put what you think is needed, put it on the side, and let people vote. And if you were going to the field, you saw a press box, and you saw the bleachers were full, and you saw a concession stand with bathrooms instead of the 2 that we have down by the boys' locker room. If we had all of that, and you saw the grass field, I don't think you'd be having this conversation right now. Because I don't think the turf field would be as much of an issue. It's more about everything else that's around there.
Yeah, no, it is.
well, that's what brought it up, because they do want to address what's around the field, and we're just saying,
Well,
just bundle it.
a piece of that too, is, and I get that, the turf field is, everybody wants to have what everybody has, okay? And that's a piece of it, all right? The conversations that we've had about it is with, the track right now has some life still in it, because it was recoded in 2016, 17, it has life in it. If you do the periphery at this point in time in this project, and then you were to go out a couple of years to another project for the turf field and redoing the track and going that route, that's another option that could be out there, which might fit into the cost allocations that right now don't really work for what we're doing.
I guess the original thought process when we started the discussion of a additional bond was going to be a cost neutral to the taxpayer.
Oh, yeah, I
So,
think that's very important.
I mean, that's the critical piece, but I don't want to see us, package this and have Prop 1, Prop 2, Prop 3, or A, B,
No,
whatever it may be.
3 props never really work
And
here,
then-
quite frankly, unless the third
Or
is for
just-
buses.
Or just Prop 2 or Prop A.
Yeah.
And add, and that proposition is going to affect the taxpayer's bottom line. Because that's going to add a cost to the tax. So I don't want to see that jeopardize cost neutral, or maybe it'll be positive for the cost. Maybe both will go through, maybe it'll make them both fly. But that's saying that all the community is in favor of a turf field. I like a turf field, you like, because we have athletes in our family. We have. And you're hearing it from those spectators, but is the community going to support it? That's the thing.
Ultimately, you don't know
You don't, no,
until
of
you
course
put it
not.
to vote. And I think that what I'm asking for is just that opportunity. They say no, they say no.
No, I mean, well, I'm hearing we're kind of split a little bit.
Yeah,
but if
yeah,
you're in-
well, that's-
If
there's
you're in
good debate.
favor of a Prop 2, then I would say we go that route.
Are you still thinking that this would be a vote in October, or would it be
May vote where you're doing your budget, potentially your transportation proposition, as well as a building project, and then another, I mean, that would be 4
Maybe
Yeah, it's a lot.
on one
you
thing,
might
right?
also have BOCES in there, right?
Say that again?
You
No,
might
oh,
also
yeah.
have BOCES in that time frame, maybe not the same.
Right, it wouldn't be on the ballot.
Yeah, that wouldn't be on
It
that
would be
same ballot.
still
Right, same
in the mix.
timeframe though.
potentially.
Right, if the school, right, if the school votes no, you're right. It's gonna be a separate vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the October, or sorry, the December 22 vote, just because it gives us time to market it. I just think that, we want things to be successful, how we package it and market it. I don't know if we'll be able to market it and get everything, to meet all the deadlines by the May vote. So that's just kind of my concern with, if we're gonna put it out, I'd rather put it out, right, like Tom said earlier, and then we're more likely to get the buy-in from the community.
Right.
If we do it that way versus just throwing something out there, and we may lose, things that we wanna get passed, may not get passed because we didn't take that time, so.
I'm standing, I want to remain tax neutral to the taxpayers. If there's a way that Victoria can magically do this, I'm all for it.
Well, I think
Kid,
one
I got some
option,
other things.
yeah, one option to the taxpayers would be that tax neutral, right?
Right.
And then,
But I don't even
then they
want-
would
yeah.
make the choice of, the community
They
would
wanna-
speak to say whether they wanna go about it or not.
I hear you, I will not be in favor of that.
Yeah.
But I'm just one person. I will not, it's just so expensive here, and I still wanna consider the taxpayers.
I do too. I mean, there's a part of me that shares that, and I gotta tell you that I think that at the last board meeting, and the board meeting before that, where we talked about the BOCES, and I was like, well, is it part of the 15 or outside? I think that day I said outside. I gotta be honest, I've been waffling a little bit because I see, we know costs are rising. I mean, just look at the scope creep built into this thing. It's like 25%. 10% construction contingency, 10% estimating contingency, 9% escalators.
No, it's absolutely true.
So, but here's the thing. This will be done eventually, whether or not now, and all I know is the longer it takes, the more money it costs. On any of it.
That's true, Sue.
So,
In life.
you've got a chunk here that doesn't come around often. When will the next opportunity arise for Highland to be able to bond more than 10 million without an impact to its taxpayers?
10 years.
Ish,
10 years.
all right?
Somewhere right around there.
Materials are climbing at approximately 6 to 9% right now. You multiply that out times 10 years,
It ends up being a
that's
smaller
just what
project. It ends up being a smaller
the
project in the
forward-thinking
future.
part of me says, start knocking some of these off.
Yep.
While you have the opportunity. Turf, air conditioning, get them behind you. Because then it is all maintenance and all that. And yes, they gotta be replaced down the road, but it's not the initial investment. The longer you wait, the more it is. So I'm no direct answer. I'm kind of thinking out loud. We've got costs in front of us. Thank you. That was a big part. Do we have a second meeting in December?
We do not.
I think we gotta study this document and find out where our comfort levels are and come prepared, if we don't have another meeting, which doesn't look like it's gonna happen, come prepared in January to really have some good discussion and really start outlining. Support Services is gonna also be doing that and try to meld this together, so in February we can hand this, we have a better direction.
Well, I think the support service has gone that route so far, but
They've done it,
if the
yeah.
rest of the board
Yep.
saying they want turf field and the running track's gotta be upgraded, then the support service is gonna have to go back and say, all
Something
right,
else.
we're gonna
sounds
pull
good.
out all the reconstruction work and classroom improvements at the elementary school to fit in the turf field and the track.
But it still might not
We
fit
don't
into
have
But
our.
it might not fit the
It won't fit the
ratio.
incidentals.
No, I know,
Yeah,
but we just don't have
ultimately,
enough
Your
movement.
cost allowance is the problem, yeah.
So we're kinda handcuffed
Okay.
in a lot of ways.
So, I know when we walked out on the track, there was some concerns over some of, I think, the base under the track.
Yeah, there's some cracking, there's some cracking in the track due to the base beginning to fail.
So say, for whatever reason, whether it's through one proposition or another, we don't decide to do anything on the track. Is that track still in good enough shape for a period of time? Or is there other work that would need to be done on it?
It's gonna have to be replaced within the next 5
Yeah,
years.
it's not gonna last
5
10
years?
years to the next project.
Right.
But
That's
the
a
track
crystal ball
replacement-
thing, but it's, right now, there's some areas of the track where it's showing crack. Okay, so how that progresses, that's something we don't know until we see it. But if you were gonna throw a number at it and say 5 years is probably a number, it could be. It could make 5 years, it's probably gonna have to be repaired every spring, they're gonna have to come in and caulk cracks and do some minor repairs on it until it gets to a point where it can no longer be patched.
That happened before, it wasn't able to, from 2002 to when it was redone. Highland was not able to host meets because there was numerous cracks in the track. So they were able to practice, but they weren't able to host.
Embarrassing,
Right, absolutely.
inappropriate.
I just don't want to get to that place.
Once it starts, it's hard to slow it down once it starts, just because the water penetration is what does the damage.
And that's what you're managing over there, a lot of water coming off that incline, that shale shoulder.
And there's always.
And you know what you need at the bottom of that? A drainage marble, AKA a turf field is a drainage marble. It is, unbelievable. I see it at Marlboro, raining real hard and you watch that little retention pond fill up approximately 12 to 15, 16 minutes later. Unbelievable.
Fields just drain so fast, they drain, 8, 10 inches.
Are they not a drainage marble? Camille's laughing at me, she's gonna rib me later, but they're drainage marbles. And that's the problem we have back there. I do watch a little Discovery Channel. Throw that out there.
Victoria, do you have any projections of money left over for the end of this year?
Not yet.
No, too soon?
A little bit.
Too soon?
That's the other thing you have to consider, the board, is that extending that capital reserve. That played a big part in the last two projects being cost neutral, so.
Right, that
It
is
expires
right.
in 2.5 years, I think it
Right,
is.
so well,
What's
we're
that
planning
nugget?
on having that, using part, that
Yes,
for the
we're planning
project,
on
right?
using all of it for
Oh,
this
good.
project. And
Okay.
then if we do have additional left over at the end of this year, we would definitely look
Roll
to add it
that
to
into
that,
it.
and we could expand the scope.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not gonna get us a different cost allowance, which is what we
Right,
keep,
which is the difficult
that's
part.
what we keep banging up against.
That's
And what's that amount? That capital reserve?
The capital reserve right now, I wanna say it's like 1.9,
That'll knock off some classrooms.
but that's already factored into this.
Already, oh,
That's right, that, what's in there currently was in that number that got you the 15.5 of construction incidentals. If you have anything else, you could add that, but that was already taken into account.
It's interesting, when I heard 15 million at first, I thought it was all the money in the world, no.
Yeah,
It's amazing how
Tom?
quick you can spend that.
Wow.
So if we can, Victoria, so if we can do the 15.5,
So right now, there's,
why don't we just move the athletic fields and the turf over to
Because-
bring this up to 15.5?
because we can't accommodate it within the maximum cost allowance for incidentals, which is site work, which is that entire
Right, so,
component.
so again, the 15.5 is assuming the project would be, predominantly aidable. If we pulled that turf and track over because of that 8 ceiling we had in the other presentation, there's only about 1.7 left, and that's 3 million, so it's basically 1.3 million that you're gonna get 0 aid on. So that would reduce that impact, what we can do for no tax impact, because the project cost of debt service would still be the same, but now we just lost a bunch of building aids, so now the tax impact would go up, so we would have to reduce the number.
So Sue, that's this sheet that they're talking
Right,
about,
yeah,
the
that's
green
the,
on the bottom,
right,
how much we have left?
So you have,
Victoria.
You have plenty of room to pull any kind of reconstruction items that are in the building in, because there's plenty of room on those 8 ceilings. It's really that site work, so whether you're talking, the track and turf or the other big ticket item on it, if you mentioned that you had for further systems of parking lots, would also fall in the same conversation. If you're doing a lot of parking lot work, it would be in the same boat of bumping up against those 8 ceilings at the high school.
So from a marketing standpoint, we're gonna try to sell both propositions if that's the route we take. But the taxpayers are gonna realize proposition 1 is gonna be tax neutral. Proposition 2 is gonna add cost to their.
Correct.
That prop's gonna need some champions. And if it doesn't go, it doesn't go.
That's
But
where
also,
the
I think
people
the
that are the
vision
base
that-
of that support have to step up.
I think the vision that Joel had talked about, kind of getting those mock-ups done and allowing people to see them. We haven't necessarily done that in the past that I recall.
The last one
Because
was
it hasn't
cost
been
neutral,
anything-
yeah, it hasn't really been.
And it hasn't been any like
We
big,
didn't need it, it made sense.
right,
We did it
big
for
things.
We did it for the
We
one
did this for the
before that.
14
Yeah,
project.
the 2015.
And you know,
But
and
what I
we
see
would have all that, I'm
currently-
sorry.
Now, what I see currently is a lot of districts are just doing the PowerPoints on their website, and it's really.
Yeah, no, we would definitely have that.
That's the selling point. It's not-
And-
We're doing several things that are at your full disposal, and we did it at Marlboro, we did it at Pauling, as we do, our marketing group comes in and works with you and develops the whole strategy. We do video testimonials, we do, we'll do flyovers with the drone, we'll do the boards like we had at Marlboro, we had all the boards up at each of the schools.
Yep.
We could do postcard mailers, we could do whatever is necessary, and that's all, you know, so Phil comes down with Jamie and they lay it all out and then they execute it for you.
And those boards, you have them in each of the schools at the opening of school. All those open houses are always in the beginning, so you could have somebody there
Yeah, we really
to
want
speak about all of
community
them. And then you could also have them on the Friday nights when people are on that field. You know, and if it's a video, we could have a screen out there that could be running. You know, there's a lot of things that we could do
Town board meeting.
to promote it so that there's nobody that doesn't know that this is happening. And there's a motivation behind
And just to give people the opportunity to
to come out and
how they
express
feel.
what they want,
Right.
one way or the other,
Exactly.
you know.
Let's say that it does go through. And so I would assume you're talking about a second proposition for this,
Right.
for the turf field and the,
Whatever else
Possibly.
you want to answer.
well. So I'm assuming that goes into the ongoing debt. And so once that retires, will we be in a position to say, okay, that debt is gonna drop off, we don't need to do this, the taxpayers are gonna get a break at the end of the 10 years? Or are we going to go out and say, once again, we wanna remain tax neutral at the higher level? Do you know what I
The
mean?
new norm.
Yeah.
It'll be the new norm.
I mean, that would be whatever your board in 10 years decides to
Right.
do, what the new
I'll
norm
say,
would be.
my goal would be
Future
that
time,
some of that has to
predict.
return to the taxpayer.
Oh, it'll never happen.
I mean,
I mean, we can't promise, that's the thing, we can't promise what's gonna happen in 10 years,
Yeah,
because we
but-
won't be the
but-
voting
But
members.
see, that's what we're building. We're building something,
Right.
we're building a higher level that
We
we're gonna
won't
say,
be
oh
able to
no, we
come
wanna
back
remain
off of.
neutral, we don't wanna give it back.
Sure,
Well,
no, I understand.
With any luck, school funding will change within 10 years.
That's what they said 10 years ago.
Well,
But
but you
it's
never
true.
know, it
Yeah.
could,
There
there
is
could
steps
be.
in that direction,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
So,
It's just-
I guess my question now is from hearing everybody, it looks like, sounds like, not looks, it sounds like the base proposition, everyone's somewhat in favor because it addresses all our immediate needs. I think it's the proposition 2 and how that's gonna be packaged is are we gonna put the turf field, the running track, and I'm gonna throw out there the maintenance building into that. So, it's not that we need a lot of time to make that decision, and I think it's plenty of time for Tom's support staff to sell it, put it together, to sell it to the community, because he can't go, you really can't go much further, because you can't do designs, we know it's approved, so you can't go much further than what you basically gave us, maybe tweaking a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the numbers are,
Right,
they're in front of us. They've done
We
what they
would
need.
develop some graphics even of the maintenance building so people can understand.
That, yeah,
We
that's
would
about,
do, we would do that stuff.
yeah,
you know.
and that's, so,
Absolutely.
that's where I'm personally reluctant to go out to December, because it's just pushing everything further out, and the unknowns that are out there could affect the project,
The October, not
cost-wise and
December.
everything else.
You know, I haven't looked thoroughly through the white items.
Yeah,
I
no.
would like to. There might be something there that, you know, there still could be some slippage here and there between the categories. Let's say, because.
Well, actually, there's room right now for some of the yellow
Yeah.
or the green to be added to the white, because we can get up to 15.5.
I don't recommend that. I mean, that's not my thinking, but either way, we've got numbers, we've shared a lot of ideas. Let's take it back over this winter recess. Let's talk. Want you to call me if you got something, let's talk. And then come back in January with some parameters that we could meld together and give some folks some direction. Does that make sense? Or I don't want to end it, you know, I mean, please talk away, but I just want to get into
I want
this.
to keep quiet for a while. What do you think, Tom Miller? How do you want to move this forward? I mean,
I don't see any reason to, in immediacy, I don't know, there's no real reason to get together again until our next meeting.
oh, that's fine, yeah,
Pretty-
that's true.
Pretty good assumption. I mean, on the support services side, do we need to have a meeting?
My feeling with the support service now is we've done pretty much our job, because why come back with, you know, this is what we want, and the rest of the board decides, no, we want to go this way. I think we presented
Yes,
what we
oh,
should
you've done
right now.
fantastic.
Well, we
So
justified what we
It's the
have.
whole board's discussion now to make a decision.
And I'll probably pull you guys, well, you know, one thing that stands out, just looking under the elementary school list, lighting fixtures to the tune of $500,000.
It's so outdated.
Is that building-wide lighting fixtures?
Yes.
Building-wide?
Yes.
Why wouldn't that be done under an energy performance contract if they're so old and inefficient?
Good. I think, did
Down the road.
Look, I
Is
think-
it the 2001 building, or no?
No, we did an energy contract, performance contract in 14, I think it was. 12 or 14. They were changed to T8s.
2T810, yeah.
And you want to do them again for $500,000?
To LEDs,
LEDs, you know, because T8s are really obsolete.
and it's gonna pay for itself.
It's unfortunate how, you know.
It is unfortunate, but
But that can be eliminated, I mean, it's.
Why doesn't that qualify for a standalone energy performance contract outside of all this?
Well, part of the elementary school was, and that's a huge building, a lot of square footage,
Right?
right? Part of the elementary school was, in upgrading the lighting fixtures, was because part of the probability was to upgrade the ceilings with new grid and new ceiling tiles in that building to create a improved aesthetic of the building down there too. So it'd be crazy to do the ceilings without the lights.
the lights, right.
But you could theoretically leave the grid and change the tiles, but the tiles are 1971 tiles, excuse me, the grid is
Ceilings?
1971 grid.
Ceiling
51
replacement.
years old, they're the original ceiling. I mean, that's just me, I don't, you know, these are 60-year-old lockers out here. How much longer are we gonna keep 60-year-old lockers as a,
No.
that's why we added a lot of that stuff.
Those items are different because they are items. Is the LED a lot more efficient than what we have in the elementary school?
Yeah.
So you're telling me it would pay for itself. Why can't that be some standalone project in a year or two? Why would that won't qualify for an energy performance
So
then?
it would, but you're tied to the energy performance contract. If you can do it and do it through a normal capital project, you're still gonna reap the savings. you're just taking the savings off yourself.
Yeah, right, I hear you.
Yeah, you gotta be careful too with an energy performance contract, if it's not a large enough dollar value, we have a hard time finding lessors interested in bidding on it, because it's a whole separate, it's a lease financing then, which is a little bit, smaller bidding pool.
So what's a good number for an energy performance contract for a school this size?
$1 million, I mean, regardless of school size, $1 million plus.
$1 million? I'll find you another half somewhere.
Anything under $1
I'm
million.
at
we've had
532 right now.
finding bidders,
10 minutes.
Yeah, small ones are typically, I think Pauling's is 1.9 million, and that was pretty small, it was like it to be.
Energy performance?
Yep, along with the capital. So it was one component, so they did 47.5 million, of which 1.9 was.
When did we do ours? 7 years ago?
I think it was 2012.
It was just finishing when I started in this job, and I think that was 2014.
Yeah, because what happens when you go to the different fixture, you're also gonna reduce the number of fixtures you have in each room, because the LEDs are so much brighter.
Yeah.
So, we take a room like this, and you're gonna eliminate 2 or 3 fixtures out of the room.
It's a good investment. I got you.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a question with the maintenance facility. So the items that are in green, so if we were to get in the maintenance facility,
Are you on the last page?
the last page,
Or
yeah. But
Is that titled Taj Mahal?
yeah, so the last page, but, the items on page 5,
Yeah, so Camille, if you were to do the last page, some of the things off the page prior would come off.
okay, all right.
Like I think it's the replacing of the lift, because it's built into
Right, that's
that.
what I'm looking at, yeah.
Yeah. So if we were to go with that green project, for lack of a better term for it, then some of those other things on page 5 would come off.
And I guess just going back to what Tom said about just making sure that that land is actually
Yep.
usable, because that's gonna mean extra expense, so I think that's something that
Yep.
we would need to know, before we move forward with that.
Let's hope for no snow.
200,000 just for the retaining wall on that.
Yeah, it does require a pretty decent.
There's a lot of site work.
No,
You
it's
got a lot of way.
not flat land. No,
It's not flat money.
not cheap at all. But even to expand on that, that's what we cost.
Yep.
I mean, just to get it to put a building of 60 by 60 in the middle of incidental is a lot of site work.
So there could be additional costs for that maintenance facility that we're not accounting for.
Yeah, we won't know until we get the geotechnical investigation completed.
What potentially would be the access point to that building for foot traffic? Up the road, or would there be a set of stairs or something?
Well, we would be thinking it would be road. We're not contemplating a sidewalk or a set of stairs like that.
It'd be an extension of Sundial Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm saying,
Up
no
into the left.
right of way issues we have to be sensitive to.
I like the idea.
Well, we own the land.
We do. own it.
We own to the center of Sundial Lane. So Sundial Lane, where it goes up the hill, is only
We own
half
the
of it.
south side of Sundial Lane,
Yes.
going up the hill.
So we would have to construct the other half of Sundial Lane to go up.
To be
To that
honest with you,
facility.
Mike, I wouldn't wanna have a proposition 2 or A, or however you wanna label it, to include the turf field, the track, additional bleachers, and package in a maintenance facility. Because I don't wanna jeopardize one from the other, so.
Yeah,
I would personally say, and I've seen districts do it, go to that third proposition, put the maintenance facility standalone. Voters want it, they voted. But I don't wanna jeopardize,
One or the other, yeah.
because they're two different, call them two different animals,
And quite frankly, I will tell you, if, when I think about a Proposition 2 for something additional, I'm not thinking, 3 million's too high for a Prop 2. It's too high. So that's part of what I wanna go back and look
I
at.
think Beacon just did 3, they all passed, I believe.
Yeah,
Beacon City
Pauling's
Schools,
was 3,
Just.
and they all have.
I don't know, I just gotta look at it some more. That's not in my comfort zone. 1.5.
I've got a question for Victoria. Our capital savings account, you said before it has about 1.9 million in it. So let's say there's a miracle that happens, at the end of this year, we have another million. So we almost have about 3 million. Can we take that 3 million and pay for the turf field
Well, we've
and the
already
athletic
used,
field?
we've already used the 1.9, that's off the table. That's part of this project.
But, okay, so if,
Because if you pull that out of the funding for this, then we're gonna lose a lot more scope.
Right, the 1.9, the presentation that Chris came and did in September had that 1.9 already factored into that report that we had, that was coming up with a max, no impact project we could do.
so what
So
would
in your
that, what would that
situation,
reduce?
just the
Would
million
that
would be a
reduce the
new.
project? So
Yes.
we would have to reduce our project
Yes.
to what amount? Or
We'd have to run
Run the numbers.
updated numbers to see.
But to answer your question, Sue, if the project was extended to fall of '22, and come June of '22, Victoria finds $1 million more, Jason and Tom, that expands that project. It could be another $5 million.
Well, it could either expand the project or help offset going over
Right.
the age ceilings, right? So at that level we're talking about, if we put the turf and track in, now that project would have to come down to still be tax neutral because it's less aidable. But if we can put more cash in, we can counteract the loss of aid to
But
an
see, that's what I'm
extent,
just
so.
thinking of, using the cash that we have on hand to pay for that non-aidable
Portion.
But
portion.
regardless, that still has to get voted on by the voters, right, and approved? Even if we're
Using
using
capital
the
reserve.
capital reserve
Yeah,
regardless
you
of.
still
Right,
have to
but
vote on
still,
that
it's-
to-
There's a narrative
We have
that
the
gets
money.
built though.
Yeah,
through
absolutely.
process.
The use of the capital reserve is all embedded, the vote to get the money out of the reserve is embedded in the
Yeah.
proposition for the project, it's all, I would
The
say,
standalone that would have to
you're
be voted.
voting 60 million, 3 million from reserves, bonding 13 million, it's all.
But I understand where she's going. You've got 1.7 million in cap still available. If you had another million at the end of the year, that's 2.7 million. You're almost at that $3 million mark, essentially at your aided rate.
Yes,
How's it get to be 80?
Right.
Because you're within the cap.
Well, no, you're still gonna be over the cap, the costs are what they are, you're going over the
This
cap,
work
but
will get you
putting
your own
in,
banner on
So you're
that
putting in the
field.
million to offset what's not
it
aided.
helps
No,
offset
that's
what's
all
not
right.
aided, but it's not necessarily a one for one.
I don't see why we can't.
Right, we'll get you
It
the
helps,
press
what it
box.
does is it helps reduce the
Oh,
amount
right.
of debt service, which can then counteract the loss of building aid from going over. Well, we'd have to run numbers to see what exactly.
But you're spending whole dollars instead of $80, correct? That's the key.
Well, I
You're
think,
spending whole dollars instead of $80.
I think you have to get
Yeah,
more
yeah,
information
yeah.
on some of
Okay.
these numbers, so you even know what the impact,
If you could
you know,
do
because
some
I don't have
matches, it'd
any
be
thoughts on
wonderful.
what the impact is.
We would
Right.
need them.
If you put that proposition up for all the sports components, right, the athletic components, what does that mean right now, right? If you fit out your first 15 million with no pick, what does that mean, Prop 2 mean for the average taxpayer?
Yeah, right.
I mean, is that $20 a year, is it $200 a year? I don't have that perspective. And
No, that's what we have to find out.
Yeah, we'll need to
The
know
voters
that.
are gonna have to know that.
And we can run that for you, but we have to know what's that base scope to do that, because if that, if you fill in that other 2+ million that we haven't filled in yet with construction, versus if you fill it in with like parking lots, that's gonna change how much of that aid ceiling's left to cover when we put that turf field up, right? So if we're putting that 3 million in, are we getting no aid on that 3 million, or are we
By
getting
the
a
end
million
of, by our
aid?
second meeting in
That'll change
January,
the
we've got to
impact.
have
3
some.
million
No.
Right, they only have one
is,
million.
20% of that is incidental related, right? So say,
So the 3 million for turf and track is 100% incidental.
you know what I'm saying, I was thinking if they filled in with just building projects, the $3 million to get to the 15.
Right, good.
How much of the incidental would be left as still cap related to the second proposition?
Right, and that's also we need to know is that is it all construction or is it something else, because that's, once we know what that is.
You know, that's all I'm saying.
Not the additional
Well,
problem.
I'm not sure there's any
Maybe.
singular component left
it's not
that
just.
site work that wouldn't put you over the cap. So I think it's all gonna have to be building related to fill into the 15 million.
These are important things to think about. I mean, I'm glad we're fleshing it out here.
So I think that's the direction.
And I guess the other.
Board's gonna do is fill in that
Right.
missing 2.1 million, whatever
Well,
it is.
and the other
Building
alternative,
Yeah.
the other alternative that I don't know that's been discussed yet is you could, if you looked at that first line of scope, you said that is the priorities. We don't have to fill it just to fill it. You know, we could leave a little bit of cushion to help offset some of the tax impact of a TERP proposition. So maybe, you know, instead of going to the 15.5, that, you know, column you have right now is really kind of your key base priorities. You do that, and that leaves a little bit of room that can offset the impact of the Prop 2. So the Prop 2, if it's gonna be, you know, $10 a house, part of that fits within the existing, so maybe it's
So
only
what do you
$5
need,
a house.
what would you need from us? What do you need from us for
Mr. Miller?
the January 11th meeting that
It's an
could
important
help
question.
facilitate everything that you're saying right now? You need us to fill that remaining.
We just need to know what do you want the base prop to be, right? Are you gonna fill it in, and if so, with what scope items?
Right.
Or what we just talked about, is do you just go with what you've already prioritized right now, and that'll leave a little bit of cushion that could then offset, you know, some of the impact of the second prop? You'd still have some tax
I
increase.
think those are the two scenarios. I think those are the two scenarios.
Joel, that's what we have to do before our next meeting, because that answers a lot of questions.
Yeah,
So we need to,
so that's what, so we can get support services together to do that.
We talked about late December, early January, before the meeting.
we did.
Fits the time frame. Fits the time frame.
And then you would need to know if the board is opting to additional proposition. Then you could figure, how would you figure what the impact is gonna be to the taxpayers with that additional proposition? When would you need to know that?
Well, I mean, I guess whether it's all packaged as one or a Prop 1 and a Prop 2, the tax impact in the aggregate is gonna be the same.
But you need the aggregate.
It's just, you know, whether you wanna distinguish between like Prop 1, I mean, I guess either way, Prop 1, from what I'm hearing from you, is going to be tax neutral, whether it's right at the bar or slightly below the bar.
Right.
It's tax neutral, and then the impact of the total is gonna be what it is, so we would just need to know. It'd be nice to have the proposition, like the breakdown, if you're gonna go two props between 1 and 2, so the report is kinda entirely accurate. But if you just have a general scope, in theory, breaking it out into propositions, you know, still should be the same impact.
Well, I think Prop 2 in either scenario doesn't vary, right? It's all the athletic components, right? So that's a package.
Yeah.
I'm just scenarios for him to run. And then it's only what's the variation in Prop 1. You could run one scenario that you keep it right at the level it's at now, and one scenario where you fill it into the 15-1 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then it'll show you what the difference is to the
Right.
taxpayer share in Prop 2. I can give you all
Okay.
Right, so that would be three things that we'd be looking at.
So that combination bring us to that 15 million of that remaining 2.1 can be a mix of athletic or site work and educational.
What I'm saying is it probably can't, because there isn't any item that's gonna fit within your cost allowance right now. So I'm saying, you know, we don't really need to even know what the individual items are. Figure you're gonna fill it into
Yeah,
that 15
just
one,
the-
run that scenario.
I would
you know.
say the board's gonna fill that in.
Yeah, and it'll give you the two kind of
I
evaluations.
think he was.
Or you can offset the cost of the other proposition too, though, you said. So it could be, you know, less impact. If you
Right,
don't feel it.
as we know more, we'll know the impact.
I would think that if the board had items in a shaded area the shaded areas, the different colors,
The yellow
that,
or the green.
or the green, yellow or green, that they had interest in, that it can convey to support services so we can continue to compact it.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then we also gotta have a conversation with, Tom Ritzenthal about what our options are with the parking lot.
Yep.
And what the life expectancy of that is for where it's going.
This one here, high need, absolutely.
Yeah, we're meeting.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Right.
More expensive than the building.
Well, that's probably assuming you're gonna strip the whole thing, redo the base.
Well, yes, because we have, well, whether we do the whole thing or we do areas, because we've repaired areas in the past that are already breaking up again.
Is this just the back parking lot, or is this front, back, road?
No, this
Back.
is all done. This is all new.
Front's all new.
And you have to really do full depth replacement, or else they won't give you building in for it.
Full deck?
Full depth, they want you to, you're
Yeah,
replacing.
replace the whole thing, right. No, they want it done right.
We can't mill, we can't mill.
Well, we've had-
If you miss the top,
Stewards,
they
We've
won't
had
give you-
areas where we've gone down Partway
Yeah.
and repaved it with
Yeah.
the town as a shared service type thing. We bought the materials and they did the work and stuff that has already broken up again because we didn't go full depth.
Oh, no, I hear you, I just. So what I'm hearing is if the board members in their review of this have yellow items that are gonna move to another color,
Or
or
no
white
color.
items
Or no color.
No color.
that are gonna move to another color, you need to know about that over the winter recess, so you have that information going into your
We
meeting.
need to know it sooner.
I would say before the winter recess, because we're gonna meet as a support
Okay.
services to try to
Within, the-
build this.
somewhere within the next 3 weeks, you would need to know that.
Two.
But that really wouldn't affect.
No, the amounts.
No, the dollars doesn't matter, Alan. We're just looking to try to start to solidify where we're
Yeah,
going.
yeah, no, that's-
Consensus, I got you, okay,
But I think
okay.
the bigger question is the board in favor of Prop 2 or not? Because if we don't have a Prop 2, how do we put in?
I think that if, I am in favor of a Prop 2, I have to
I would
be,
be too.
because I want to give the community a
Yeah,
choice.
That's why I
I
said,
think
I
we have
think
to,
it's my
we have
duty
to,
to
we
allow.
have to break it out, we have to separate it. Because
I
you
think
run
it's
a
our
chance
duty.
of getting the whole thing turned down.
Yeah, we need those things, the other things,
So
this is done.
we're right back to the same point again.
What's that?
No, I'm just saying, I think we have to have a proposition too.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So we're assuming there's a consensus for a Prop 2.
Yes.
I think it's our duty to allow the taxpayers to make that decision.
Because
I'm not in favor of it, but that's fine.
we already had that scenario where we packaged everything together and then it got turned down. And then we're scrambling at that point, years ago,
Yeah.
when we tried the original, so. that's
So
the only sensible-
what I'm hearing is we look at what a base project is, a base project plus the athletic project. And within those scenarios, what is the base project? Is it 12.7 or is it 15.5? And maybe we run those numbers. Whether we have all the items in there or not, it'll give us an idea of what the difference is.
What we can do.
And then you could get some estimates around that.
Yeah.
Right.
Tax impact to the taxpayer,
Right.
Yes.
And then we would just have to have some consultation about what items could actually move where we're not offsetting those ratios, so that we're staying within what the allowances are. We may think it's, project X, Y, and Z from the white, or from the yellow to move over into the white area. Those may not fit because of the debt, or the cost allowances.
And I'm hoping we're still recording, because I do want to share this video link
Yeah,
with the public.
I don't think she turned it off.
She
With my
told me to close it, and that would turn it off.
Right, with
Good.
my constituency, and say, listen to this discussion, it's an important one. Look at how difficult it is, and all the
Sure.
pieces.
Okay.
Just for my knowledge, the lockers, it's not a big ticket item, that's in yellow, but just, I would like to hear from like the high schoolers, if we have lockers that actually use it. Because some, some
I
high
was gonna
schools
ask
will use
Maggie
it.
and she.
They'll
That's
use
out.
them, and shame on us that they're still here in 2022.
You know, you're talking hallway lockers.
Yeah, the ones outside, because they're not
Right.
usable right now, but if we're
Right.
gonna use it, we wanna,
Right, that they're gonna
Kicking
be
the
used.
can down the road, that's the ideology.
they may not be used because they're just too small, or, we don't know, but I know they're not feasible for all.
If they were brand new lockers, my guess is they'd all want to use them.
Yeah.
You know, especially those kids coming up from the middle school, they all use their lockers there. And if that first year they got here and they had brand new lockers, I can almost guarantee they'd all be used.
They have instruments and they have,
Yeah.
kids ed gear and outfit, so it's just something that doesn't look good, so. I mean, that's one item that I can say that I would like to see,
Moved over.
moved over.
I agree.
Well, and if not for anything other than it just makes the
Visual.
hallway look nicer too, you know.
So we wanna have another meeting, this month, as a board.
I
Yes.
don't think so.
I don't think so now.
I don't think so.
I
I
think
think
gives
we have our
everybody enough
direction.
time to.
Well, it's gonna be difficult to have one because the next Tuesday it's available, because next week's all concerts and then
Can't
it's the
fit it
following
in,
week is the
that's the problem.
Derek meeting.
There's a lot of evening stuff.
Yeah, next week's very busy with the concerts.
Yeah.
What's that?
Week after that is
We
holiday.
can meet on the 24th.
Yeah.
No.
I love room for the president, vice president on top.
Oh, exactly.
No, support services probably should.
He skipped a line.
Al, would you be available sometime before the end of the month?
Yeah, it's for sports.
Yeah. Okay.
But do we have our charge?
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Do you?
He's gonna tell it to
We'll
you
check the tape.
that day.
I really don't know what it is, you know, I don't know if we're
I would say
filling-
support
I don't know if
services
we're
any day
filling in.
next week sounds good to me.
I don't know if we're filling in the 2.1 or if
Thursday and Friday,
we're
I'm
just
not here.
proposing a proposition 2? What's been your,
He said that we'll look at
I
both,
think he's
both
gonna give us all
options,
three.
see what it looks like.
Yeah,
That's gonna emerge.
See what the impact.
standalone,
Just the
standalone
one.
with the
Trustee,
prop,
I think it's son.
and then
you-
the
you-
two different dollar amounts. That's what I'm understanding,
Yeah.
what he's going to do.
we can throw that out right now.
But let's see what the
We don't
impact will
have
be.
we don't have to fill it in right now,
No,
No,
so while
we can if that's what support
Yeah,
services
yeah, we
wants to
can, but I
do.
mean, if we're meeting just to decide if we're gonna go with that, then we don't need to meet.
Who's-
That's
Do it
fine
right
too.
now.
Who are we talking about meeting? Support services?
You can make the decision right now.
I get that, but I-
If we don't have to fill in a move item, we can make that decision pretty much right now, without having to support it.
So it's just the scenarios, it's base project 1 at 12.7 or 15.5,
Right.
and then base project 1 plus the turf and the,
Or whatever, yeah,
Running.
whatever, yeah.
at both of those two dollar amounts,
Right.
12.7 and
That's what
15.5.
we do, do that
And
right
what are
now.
the differences?
And what are the differences, and we can have that on
We're here.
one, probably on one page. What's that?
We're here.
no, we talked about, they wanted, so we can see what the impact, tax
Right.
impact is.
Yeah.
of Both options, that's why we're waiting, we're not gonna, that's why we're suggesting we wait to get a decision so we can actually see the tax impact. We don't have that information right now.
So basically, we're sending them
Thank
back with that
goodness that
information.
Jason stayed.
We'll probably have it by tomorrow morning, because that's
Send
how
it
quick
with
they are.
homework.
Thank you.
So the other piece of it though is that if we're going to realign some of those items and fit into the cost allocations, support services is gonna have to have a conversation on that to be able to package that so that it's relatable to the board for January.
No, because unless we know what the rest of
Right.
the board is,
Thinking.
what they wanna move around.
But that's what they do, that was, you got 2 weeks to tell us that so we can
Yeah.
move it around.
Yeah, we can't meet and make
No,
a
but if we,
decision.
No, but we can do that
if support services meets
before the.
theoretically on the 21st or something like that, or whatever,
Right,
then we can have all that information before that time, that anybody who had feelings like the locker thing, which is a good idea and a piece of the
So remaining.
Pete, what's wrong with the air conditioning in the library?
The air conditioning in the library was undersized from day one. That's all I can tell you. We can make it work by lying to
You
it.
still gonna put it in that room, in the back of that room?
No, it's going on the roof.
We're going on the roof.
We have a motor in that unit that we have to take a wall out in order to change it if it goes bad. We have to take the wall out of the
Yeah, I
factory.
know, it's a pain in the tuck, they tucked it away back there, but it's a $300,000 item.
But we have,
AC for a library, I mean, can't we get a few split systems in there?
a lot of windows, put a window unit.
Do those, does the new roof open up and get some fresh air in there? I'll get you a fan. I'll take,
We don't use it for a board.
you're gonna
meeting,
see
what
that
do
on my list, moving from white to something else. I'll tell you that, 300 grand for A space for air conditioning?
Okay, I could have waited, I just had my hand up. I just wanted to say I'm trying to process the timeline in my head. And I know we're trying to get details from Jason about the impact of those two different options. So if we meet as support services, we don't really know yet what our final budget is gonna be. So what are we gonna do?
We don't know what total proposition two. No,
We don't know what total
but if it's-
proposition one will be either.
If it's what I'm hearing, and it's running track, turf field, press box, and bleachers, that totals about whatever it is.
It's the bleachers. I don't know.
We're not gonna add
But-
anything else to that.
We don't know yet whether the board is gonna want a $12.7 million
Right,
project
right,
with
I think
those,
that's,
or the
yeah.
15.5 with those.
But they're gonna run all the scenarios. So
Right, so
they're
it
gonna-
makes the most sense for us to have those scenarios for your next board meeting in January, then once you've had those discussions, then you can decide which way you wanna go, and if you're going with the bigger one, you can have that discussion of what additional scope items you're pulling into that.
The bigger the project, the more aid you're gonna get. Right? If it's 15 something, you're gonna get more aid than you would on 12 something, down the road. Correct?
Right, but you're gonna have more cost too, so that the.
So maybe it's
We
not
can run it
necessary
with
for
it.
support services to meet before we have that information and the board gives direction as to where they wanna go.
Right, I think if
To
we,
pick out what the
For
items are,
that, but
but we're gonna need to do that within a few days of that January 11th
But
meeting.
if you had the support service meeting and the rest of the board had 2 weeks, and you come back with, like Mike's saying, I wanna pull air conditioning out of the library and put lockers back in, at least we could redo that.
Well, we could definitely,
That's fine.
we can
But
create a bunch
is
of
that
different
necessary?
scenarios.
I don't know.
Well, if you're going to 15.1, then you're putting the lockers back in anyway,
15.5.
Right.
15.5.
15.5. So maybe the support service can have that ready to go, and when you come back on the 11th with numbers, then we could say, no, we're gonna go 15.7, and here's what we're
Yeah,
putting.
you create an option list.
We wanna get an
That's
option
all it
list
is. Yeah.
from the rest of the board.
That's right.
Prior to the 21st.
Yeah.
We got numbers, we
Prior to
got
the
clarity
21st.
here.
So
Yeah, that
the
was the,
15.5 is tax neutral, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Then why aren't we just let's do it? 15.5.
Well, it's what,
Because the turf field doesn't work under allowances, so it's looking at
But
what
the,
you can get with them.
but I thought the turf field didn't come into the 15.5. It does
Doesn't.
not.
It doesn't.
So why aren't we just saying we're gonna go to 15.5 and just move some stuff
We
over?
definitely can, but we were hearing from some board members didn't wanna go, they wanted to see what the difference was. We can go to 15.5, we can have them just run the numbers.
Because it's tax neutral.
yeah, there's an
Am I
issue.
wrong?
Well,
Did
you're
you-
right, yes.
Did you say what you said earlier about maybe why you might want to consider?
right, I think the point that was made earlier is if you've already, if what's in those columns right there right now, the 12.7 that you're at is kind of what you were thinking was your main priorities, which, given the discussion, maybe there needs to be a little bit more review of whether some things need to come in or out of that. But if that's essentially your main priorities, then instead of just throwing extra stuff in just to throw it in to get to the 15.5. If you do the base at 12.7, if there's interest in doing a Prop 2, then that difference between the
Decreases
12.7 and the 15.5 can offset some of the cost of the Prop 2. So if the Prop 2 is gonna cost this,
All right,
if you do a
okay, I
smaller
like that
base
idea.
project, that
Yes,
would only
yes,
cost
it
this.
decreases the impact
Okay.
of Prop 2.
I like
So it
that.
could be
Nice to
a-
see
it's
those
not
Right,
just a
instead of
throw-in.
just, and I don't wanna say artificially inflating it, but
Okay.
going to the 15 just because we can,
If you felt like you needed the 15, go to it, but if you're real.
it's almost a responsible way to approach Prop
That
2.
is, that is,
Correct.
I know you
yes.
don't like it, vote no.
No, I'm not saying, because you go back to the original 31 million. You said you wanted to get the biggest chunk of the 31 million. The 15.5 gets you a bigger chunk of the 31 million, if you're going that route.
And you're gonna leave that other prop for the voters to decide.
Correct.
But that's why they're gonna run all the scenarios, so you can
Right.
see.
Yeah, let's
All
put
right,
the
all right,
scenarios.
all right. I got you.
Yeah.
But then, you know, we're softening that impact with that prop by taking that 2.1
Yes.
to there.
I like
Which
that
is,
idea.
I like that, because the above and beyond, it's not just a tax increase, this is a tax increase that's gonna last in perpetuity.
Yeah, but you're losing the ability to utilize that as tax neutral. All you're doing is taking that and
I
softening
hear
that.
it, but it's still, the $3 million is not just, this will always
Yeah, but
last.
that could be $6 on a thousand
I-
taxpayer.
But it's still,
It's still an increase, yes it is.
Yes.
yes.
So let's
One-
have them run the numbers and they're not,
One compelling reason to go to 15, whatever the 15.1 or whatever it is, for the first proposition, is if you don't go to that full amount, and you save some of that for Prop 2 and Prop 2 fails, you've now lost the ability to utilize that
correct.
Oh,
in your.
God. Mr.
But that's
Devil's
a good
advocate.
point, but that's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
That's
Gotta
very-
maximize it.
It
You
is a
have to
good
maximize
point.
You know
your
what I mean?
ability to be tax neutral.
Yeah.
So then
You
go
can't
back
look-
to the 15.1.
In the end,
Let them run
life
the
is
numbers.
full of difficult choices.
And that's
Yes.
why you're sitting where you
Not
are,
that-
I'm sitting
I'm
where
just saying, right, yes,
We're making it
yes.
difficult.
Right.
Yes.
And just to put all the cards on the table, if that was what happened, we can always front load the bond, still keep you at neutral if we want.
And you know who wouldn't let me forget it? I'm not gonna point at anybody, but.
Yeah.
So just because you go at the.
Yeah, right.
Just test it out.
I'm sorry, it's after 10.
So then what ends up happening is instead of it being 10 years, maybe it's 9 years that we're eligible for
6, 7,
another
8 years for the next project.
Right.
So there's still some.
So there's
benefit.
still a way for that to, okay.
Okay.
So do we have to meet on the 21st?
We might have to.
Let's have them run the numbers, by then we'll probably
I
have
don't wanna be
some,
ahead of it.
I can share it in my,
Yes.
Unless I pick up my bonus check, I'll be here.
Yeah, no, it just, we need to get back.
Prepare for, a support for.
no.
What night?
Just tell me what day Ed is in Pennsylvania, because that's the day we'll do it.
Unless that's for company Christmas party, I'm not being.
Company Christmas party.
Well, then we'll do it at noon, we don't have parties during the day. Okay.
Can I just ask one more question? Sorry, I know it's after 10, just something to throw out there to think about. Right now we have the press box and the bleachers in the base project,
We gotta turn that.
and then thinking through Prop
And we gotta-
2
We
with
gotta
the
turn
track and the turf. Should those all be packaged together or not? Just something I think to think through.
God forbid it goes down.
Like, if it goes down, we still want,
You definitely need the press box.
Yes, yeah, I want
For
the
that
press box.
equipment.
Yes, that's a sorry sight about that.
It is.
I agree.
And it
But
has
most
to be
importantly,
done.
it's not,
Well, the
it's not
bleachers
good
are
for the,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
no.
we have a valid point for keeping that in the base project.
Pete, I'm
Yeah.
listening, do you want?
No, the thought process on that is that if we got that piece done, then you could do the field and track at a different time if that was necessary. If it's in Prop 2, then the other piece is already done,
then it's gone.
and then it just flows together.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay.
And then if you feel real ambitious, then you can put in the concession stand.
He's now in favor of the concession stand, we can see that.
So I lost my maintenance bill. The ones I was pushing for until
Until 10
I
o'clock.
retired in a year and a half.
Oh, that ain't gonna happen. I'm sorry.
All right,
All right.
where's my
We're
agenda?
moving on from the capital costs. Anybody have any correspondence? Okay,
Oh.
Good night.
Thank you guys very, very much. It was very
Yes,
helpful.
And thank you so much for staying around, that was very helpful.
Definitely
We
appreciate
really,
Happy holidays.
You're welcome to come back to every meeting from in the future if you'd like.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tom, don't forget our front canopy to take a look at that.
He says what?
Already did.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, I was here with the contractor 3 days ago. Yeah.
You're on, thank you.
yes, right.
Turn over the front canopy.
Miscellaneous, oh,
Public knowledge.
Oh,
yeah,
Just so that, just the other situation.
yeah,
Right.
all right.
That's
I
true.
thought
That's
we
true.
were something
Believe
else.
it or not, if you go
Oh,
through that tomorrow, you
before we
can't hear
close out, are we
anybody.
thinking any more about live streaming?
Huh?
Before we close out, are we thinking any more about live streaming our meetings? Not having, you know, the ability to,
First, we gotta think about, that camera does not pick up your voice. If you go listen to tomorrow morning, you're not gonna hear much at all about the discussion.
okay, are we thinking any more about the speakers, or the microphones?
microphones.
Wireless microphones?
I would like to make the meetings more accessible. I really
Me
don't
too.
like
That was true.
streaming.
Look at
With
the
mics.
feedback. One of the schools got, where they had the Zoom meetings for their parent-teacher. You know, that was very positive. The parents really appreciated that.
They do?
And it's just, this is
Our-
something about
Our
the
schools did the
We had-
parent-teacher conferences
Yeah.
by Zoom.
Yeah, it's just, it's so
They
positive.
were talking about the.
You know, I'd rather just, maybe look forward to that.
No, it is, Sue, go on tomorrow and listen, you can't.
I'll take a look.
Oh, it's the same.
Very, very, very
I
good.
tune into the town
Make
meetings
sure
and
you're
you
all
can't hear
the way up,
anything.
unless
Yeah.
you speak loud.
No, I can hear
With a
you
mask
well.
on.
Okay, so live streaming and wireless mics.
Whatever the mics are, whatever's best for them to manage, but anything
Yeah,
they
we
improvise.
can do this.
What's the one like to speak, there's two different ones, what we had in the auditorium, unless you put your mouth right on that
Yeah,
Yeah,
cell phone, you need.
Yep.
you need conference mics, that's what
Yes.
they're called.
Yeah.
A conference mic is meant to sit out
Oh,
there
it's just-
somewhere.
yeah.
And it magnifies
it is just, yeah.
And those come in the regular looking mic or.
The town board just bought the new mics that work.
They're pretty good,
Yes.
town board meeting, you could really.
Oh,
They were-
really?
they're
Oh,
crystal
so
clear.
there is, because I'll tell you, Pete, I've tuned into some of the, you can't hear a thing.
It was real muffled prior to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that was an ongoing battle with the town board of trying to get audio that would work and be
They're
effective.
excellent.
And they went through 3 different phases to come up with what they finally got now that it works. But you gotta be,
Okay, well, that's good.
I
They-
think we got it.
Okay, oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's move forward from
Yeah.
there. No correspondence. Nobody? Good.
Amen.
All right, public comment.
Aw.
Somebody said-
Aw, we chased everybody away.
kicked everybody out.
Told them all to go home.
Yeah.
All right. Motion to close the meeting. Heather, Camille.
Woohoo.
10:10.
Everybody have a great holiday.
Yes,
Merry Christmas, everybody.